Chapter 737 Recruitment. Chapter 737 Recruitment. Henny. Multitasking was nothing too difficult for a cultivator. But if one wanted to develop 2 high-grade secret techniques to their maximum limit, that was difficult to do. Ling Han began to study the earth-overturning seal first, aiming to reach the point that he would be able to use it single-handedly. The difficulty of this did not originate from the moves, and in truth, mystical powers did not have any moves per set. Hat was the case with the 4 mystical powers Ling Han had learned to date, at least. Instead, mystical powers merely taught you how to circulate your origin power so that it would adhere to some specific pattern, but exactly how one was to put it to use was entirely up to himself. For example, in the case of the earth-overturning seal, both hands would be covered fully with unique patterns. The formidable power of this mystical power originated from these patterns, as they possessed incredibly terrifying destructive power. It was the same for the exterminating dragon star arrow. Concentrating the patterns on the arrow allowed Ling Han to fire an arrow with formidable destructive power. Thus, this archery technique did not even need a real arrow and bow, as he himself could become the bow and his origin power could be formed into an arrow, and he would still be able to fire out projectiles with extremely strong destructive power. What Ling Han had to do was to combine the patterns that were originally spread out onto 2 hands on a single hand. He studied and practiced in earnest. Time passed very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, another month had passed, and he finally smiled. Stretching open his left hand, the patterns were closely intertwined. But the odd thing was that the demonic patterns actually resonated and combined with the earth-overturning seal. Though they are completely different, why do I see a similarity? Ling Han was curious. This is the power of regulation. Small Tower appeared. Regulation. Ling Han mumbled. Small Tower had said long ago that the demonic patterns were the culmination of the regulation of the realm. He only knew that they possessed great power, but did not know why. He said, "Come, explain the details to me." "I don't have any such duty." Small Tower was very tsundra. However, what we know as mystical powers touch slightly on the boundary of the regulation of a realm. So cultivate these mystical powers, well, as that would be highly beneficial to you. Even if it did not say so, he knew that for a fact. Ling Han was very gloomy. This damned Tsundra Tower completely did not treat him like a master. One day he would definitely stuff it down the toilet so that it could earnestly reflect on the errors of its ways. He exited the Black Tower to take a look, yet saw that the army the Flame King had disappeared, and there was a flag symbolizing the Purple Moon Empire raised at the nearby city gates. Obviously, the Flame King had already conquered this city and continued on his way to expand his territory. Ling Han released the others from the Black Tower, and they headed towards the city. He had to make discreet inquiries about the current situation. Apparently, the Lunar King had brought another army over half a month ago and joined troops with the Flame King. With 2 ultimate elites attacking fiercely at the same time, they had completely routed the various parties responsible for guarding the city and had forced the alliance army of the 5 great sects into retreat yet again. "Recruiting! Recruiting!" a soldier was yelling out loudly on the street. "Join our Purple Moon Army, and there is a chance you will be able to learn high-grade martial arts and cultivation techniques. Those who pass by, if you want to become friends with the ultimate elites, you should not miss this opportunity." Ling Han could not help but feel an urge to laugh. Ma Duo Bao was undependable, and the soldiers under his banner were not really all that dependable either. This slogan for troop recruitment would really make one want to laugh. However, using the temptation of cultivation and martial arts techniques would still attract many to join. There were many who were stagnant at some cultivation level. It wasn't that they did not have enough talent, nor was it that they did not have enough resources. What they lacked was higher grade cultivation techniques. I can only advance to the deity transformation tier with my cultivation technique. So how then am I supposed to break through to the heaven tier, was what they thought. Although there were indeed alchemical pills that could allow a cultivator to reach the summit in a single step, there were pitifully few of them. Only if one had luck that defied natural law would he be able to obtain them. But for the majority, they had very ordinary luck. Furthermore, high-grade cultivation techniques were treated as absolute treasures by powerful parties, and if they were not true disciples or clansmen at the core of the party, they were unable to cultivate at all. So, if they wanted to obtain high-grade cultivation techniques, what should they do? It was difficult. Thus, that was why there were so many willing to venture into ancient historical sites. What else could motivate them besides the prospect of being able to break out of their stagnation? And now, the Purple Moon Empire used their cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques to recruit troops for their army, so this was naturally tempting. Ling Han, too, wanted to take a look at the real situation in the Purple Moon Empire, so he said, "Come, let's try and enlist in the army." They walked over, and Ling Han asked, "Brother, if we enlist, would we be able to learn high-grade cultivation techniques?" "Of course, as long as you all can gain military merits," the soldier replied. "Oh, how would we be able to do that?" There was a considerable number of people gathered around. The soldier cleared his throat and said loudly, "How to get cultivation and martial arts techniques? I've already explained this many times, but every time a new friend would come over. Thus, I will still endlessly explain, and for those who had not heard this before, listen closely. In our Purple Moon Army, there are a total of 5 military ranks: King, General, Colonel, Captain, and Private. As long as you can enlist, you would be a private, which is the lowest rank. Any private would be able to learn a level 6 cultivation technique of their choice, which will ensure you will be able to break through to the flower blossom tier." Hiss! The masses gasped in surprise. For the majority of the people here, this was the first time they had heard this, so it was naturally inevitable that they would be astonished. Even though this was the middle state, where the overall martial arts level was the most prosperous, flower blossom tier signified casting off one's mortal chains and gaining an additional 200 years of life. No matter where, someone like that would definitely be considered a master, and whichever party they entered, they would be placed in important positions. But it was precisely because of this reason that level 6 cultivation techniques were not easy to get. Who knew how many people were stuck on the spiritual pedestal tier because, firstly, their talent and resources were inadequate, and secondly, they did not possess suitable cultivation techniques. Thus, how could they be capable of casting off their mortal chains? Most importantly, breaking through to the flower blossom tier would mean an additional 200 years of lifespan, and this exceeded any kind of life-extending spiritual herbs effect. Who wouldn't want that? The soldier snickered and said, "However, it is not that simple to become a soldier. At least, you would have to be in the spiritual ocean tier, and after becoming a soldier after every battle or after completing a mission, there will be an accounting of your military merit. When your military merit has reached the bar, you would be promoted from private to captain, and a captain would be able to obtain a complete level 7 cultivation technique, an earth-grade cultivation technique. Similarly, if you accumulate even more merits, you'll be promoted and become a colonel, a general, and a king. And if you become a king, not only will you be able to choose any cultivation technique you want, you can even get a mystical power. A mystical power. Everyone could feel their hair stand on ends from the shock. Although the majority did not know what a mystical power was, with the word mystical, how could it not be something awesome? I'll enlist. I'll enlist. Everyone raised their hands, respectively. The soldier laughed and gave each person a piece of paper. The word recruitment was written on it. He said, "Take this piece of paper to the training camp in the north of the city and undertake the test for new recruits. Only if you pass would you all be able to enlist. Additionally, you would only be part of reserve troops. You must complete the training before you can officially become a private. If not, even if we allow you to go into the battlegrounds, you would only be going straight to your deaths. You have to understand, our Purple Moon Army is well known for having a low casualty and injury rate. The crowds dispersed, thinking that even though they were not any Supreme Master, no matter what, they were still at least future Supreme Masters that were in the spiritual ocean and the spiritual pedestal tier. How could it be that they couldn't even manage to become a normal private? Ling Han asked for 2 recruitment forms, as well one for himself, and the other for Zhu Xianer. He then said, let's go and play too. Forget about who Niahao could she possible obey quietly. They headed out to the north of the city. After exiting the city, there was a mountain peak not too far off, and at the foot of the mountain there was a barracks which had the flag of the Purple Moon Empire raised over it. There was a large number of people gathered at the entrance. Chapter 738, New Recruits. Chapter 738, New Recruits. Henny. To enter the barracks, one first and foremost had to prove that they did indeed have spiritual ocean tier cultivation. Those who had yet to reach this cultivation level would not even have the opportunity to undergo the test. There were a total of 4 people. The oldest was an old man who looked to be in his 60s, with spiritual infant tier cultivation, followed by a bulky middle-aged man, who had similarly reached the spiritual infant tier. Then there was a young man who looked to be close to 30 years old, though his cultivation level was a bit weaker as he had only reached the flower blossom tier, and the last was a beautiful young girl, similarly in the flower blossom tier. Compared to the others who were only in the spiritual ocean and the spiritual pedestal tier, the 4 of them naturally appeared like swans amongst a flock of chickens, standing out against the norm. Ling Han cultivated an ancient technique, so his cultivation level was not apparent. Zhu Xianer, on the other hand, was similarly obvious with her cultivation in the flower blossom tier. Thankfully, she had disguised herself somewhat. Although she was still very beautiful, she was not as fatally exquisite as she had been before. Otherwise, the people here would go into a frenzy for her. Those that had achieved the requirement entered into the barracks. Ling Han slightly extended his aura and naturally entered as well. Hu Niu, meanwhile, was temporarily settled at the resting area, where she sat cross-legged together with Rabbit and began feasting merrily. A middle-aged man walked out. He was in the spiritual infant tier, his whole figure exuding a harsh, severe air. He had obviously experienced an unknown number of cruel battles. A mere look from him was enough to cause one's heart to shiver and legs to weaken. Our Purple Moon Army has no desire for trash, he began. I am Xiao Yongyan, your military instructor. You all have 2 months to convince me why I should agree to allow you to become soldiers. The door to the barracks lies there, and those who do not qualify, I will immediately throw them out. Tell me, are you all trash? Everyone felt enraged. Although there were not many elites of the flower blossom tier, the others were at least in the spiritual ocean and the spiritual pedestal tier. If even they were considered trash, then there was really no limit to the height of the standards required. No, everyone shouted, seemingly all at the same time. Very good. I hope that you all aren't trash as well, because the thing I hate the most is trash. Xiao Yongyan's eyes swept over the crowd. There is a total of 533 people here, but as far as I can see, only 50 people would be able to pass at most. From now onwards, I will use the strictest methods to train all of you. In my eyes, there is no difference between men and women, nor is there any difference between the elderly or youths. The only difference is those who qualify and those who do not. Those who do not want to undergo the training, get out of here immediately. This time, those who had been thinking of leaving had their pride provoked. If they left now, wouldn't they then become trash? Not one person moved a single step. Very good. None of you want to be trash. However, it is not you who determine whether you're trash or not, but me. Xiao Yongyan sneered. As a soldier, the most important thing is to obey commands. Even if a burning mountain lies in front of you, if you are ordered to advance, then you must not retreat. Now use the horse stance. Horse stance. That was a bit too elementary, right? Who amongst them had not advanced from the body refining tier? Who had not practiced the horse stance and stood on stumps before? The majority stood in the horse stance, but there were still a few that showed obvious disdain. Get lost! Xiao Yongnian immediately apprehended those few, and with a few tosses, shoo, these people were sent flying out of the main entrance, where they fell pitifully. Everyone felt their hearts freeze. This was actually an elite in the spiritual infant tier. Tongue. 10 soldiers marched out of the barracks. They were only in the spiritual pedestal tier. They were pushing a small cart on which there lay multiple talisman papers. Do you think the horse stance is simple? Xiao Yongnian bared his teeth in a grin. With a wave of his hand, those 10 soldiers immediately circled round to the back of the masses and began sticking paper talismans on their backs. So heavy! Those that had talismans stuck onto their backs exclaimed. There were even a few that dropped on their backsides. This is a weight talisman. Different people will have different spiritual talismans attached. I guarantee that it is within the capacity you all can withstand, Xiao Yongnian announced coldly. All of you, get back to your feet and stand back in the horse stance position. Within 3 breaths, if anyone's posture is still not up to standard, I will throw him out. Those that had fallen onto the ground hurriedly got onto their feet. Some managed to get firmly into the horse stance, but there were some that once again flopped onto the ground. 3 breaths later, Xiao Yongnian indeed began to cast people out again, throwing those that did not meet the standards out of the barracks. Ling Han saw this and nodded internally. A cultivator was individually very strong, but to become a soldier, mere individual battle prowess was useless. If the Purple Moon Empire was unable to defeat the 5 great sects or failed to split open the skies, then he would have to take on this mission. Thus, he began to be interested in commanding and training troops. Learning secretly from the Purple Moon Empire was undoubtedly the best means available. In terms of ability, he obviously dominated over Xiao Yongnian, yet still behaved seriously and obediently, not putting on any airs because of his superior ability. Everyone had a spiritual talisman attached, respectively, because Ling Han only showed cultivation of the flower blossom tier, and no one here was capable of identifying his true ability. A spiritual talisman of flower blossom level was naturally slapped onto him. It was as if a mosquito had landed on him. What effect would such minuscule weight have on him? However, even if he had had a spiritual talisman on the level of spiritual infant tier stuck onto him, it also would have been all right. With his terrifyingly powerful physique, at most, it would have been like an egg's weight had been added on. But others did not have this kind of physique, and so had to stimulate their origin power to resist the weight. This was not something as simple as delivering a palm strike or throwing a punch. One had to continuously resist, and this would greatly exhaust one's reserves of origin power. Furthermore, most cultivators did not cultivate body arts. It was fine if they had to stand in the horse stance for 2 to 4 hours, but as time passed, even if they were not short on origin power, their bodies would still feel weary. And what caused their hair to stand on ends was the fact that they had to maintain the horse stance for a whole day and night. In the meantime, they could not rest, eat, nor drink. In merely half a day's time, 17 people could not last, and were subsequently thrown out of the barracks. And when the day ended, a total of 49 people had been cast out. It had only been a day, and about 1/10 of the participants had been disqualified. Ling Han was learning. In martial arts and alchemy, he was a genius, but in commanding and training troops, he was still a blank piece of paper, endlessly soaking in experience. Actually, establishing his own nation was still extremely beneficial, as power of the nation could greatly increase his battle prowess and speed up the rate of his cultivation. Although he was advancing very quickly at the moment, that was because he had walked this path once before in his last life. But once he stepped into the immortal realm, even if he was unprecedentedly talented and a genius, he would definitely no longer be able to maintain this rate of advancement. I'll let Fatty Ma hold the fort first. If he can no longer manage, then I'll step up. However, even after we reach the immortal realm, I will still have to consider establishing my own country and speed up the rate of my cultivation. In the immortal realm, it would naturally be even more difficult to establish one's own country, because everyone knew the benefits of establishing one's own country. As a result, parties with even the slightest bit of power would be fighting tooth and nail to establish their own nations. The competition would be incredibly fierce. Chapter 739 Conflict. Chapter 739 Conflict. Henny. After 10 days, half of the people was already eliminated. After 2 months, there might not be even half of that number that could remain here. Yet, precisely after these 10 days, those that were left were the ones not only with better tenacity and strength, but also displaying the initial fostering of military discipline. Although they were still not comparable with experienced soldiers, they demonstrated the early signs of being extremely promising. 1 month later, the elimination rate had dropped drastically. There were still 100 people who managed to stay. 3 days later, all of you will be separated into 10 small groups, and each group will be assigned to carry out a task. I shall then assess you and give the score, and the group with the lowest score will then be eliminated, announced Xiao Yongyan. Everyone was startled by this, and even more so felt it somewhat unacceptable. If I am being assigned to a group full of incompetent teammates, wouldn't I be affected and be doomed to fail as well? They thought. This is precisely a test of the unity and team spirit among your group. If a group can't even coordinate well among themselves, how could we even talk about joining into the army? Xiao Yongyan snorted. I would rather choose a teammate with good rapport over one who is a lone hero. Ling Han secretly nodded. At that time, the cultivation of the 100 veteran soldiers that were headed by the Lunar King were only at the deity transformation tier. Yet the concerted efforts of these 100 people actually withstood the aftermath of a battle on the level of the Shattering Void tier. What sheer terror! This was the power of unity. Of course, this group of 100 people certainly must have used some kind of array to combine together their defensive strength. Otherwise, that would also be something unimaginable. How nice it would be if I was able to secretly learn this array, Ling Han thought to himself. Their mission this time was to wipe out a group of bandits. Actually, those bandits used to have legit and lawful businesses and were the forces of a deity transformation tier. As the army of the Purple Moon Empire swept across, the senior elder of the deity transformation tier was slaughtered, yet others actually chose to surrender. However, recently, the 5 great sects secretly instigated a rebellion among them. They entered into the complex mountainous area and became bandits, and time and again preyed upon the common people and wreaked havoc naturally. They did so with the sole purpose of wrecking the power of nation of the Purple Moon Empire. If there were strifes among the people, it would only bring about a negative impact on the power of the nation. This kind of remnant party with only a few cultivators at the spiritual infant tier was certainly not enough to make the Purple Moon Empire start a real war campaign. Thus, it was being used as a training target for new recruits like them. Frankly, even if that deity transformation tier senior elder of this gang of bandits was still alive, Ling Han could also single-handedly crush them with ease. But this time, for the sake of cultivating the team play within their group, Ling Han also did not intend to make any move to showcase his strength, and decided to honestly behave as per his flower blossom tier. They were being imparted with knowledge of an array that could fuse the strength of 10 people, achieving a 50% power. Don't think that it's merely 50% for a cooperative attack. It had always been the more the people, the poorer the effect. Otherwise, as long as they were enough in number, wouldn't body refining tier warriors also be able to kill shattering void tier ones? In reality, there was only the heaven tier elites who could rely on numbers to crush shattering void tier opponents. For the deity transformation tier, No matter how many, they were all only cannon fodder. Imposing aura of the shattering void tier was already enough to eliminate them. Therefore, to retain half of all 10 people's strength could simply be said to be terrifying. They only had 3 days' time. 3 days later, they'd need to depend on this array to meet head on that gang of bandits. Allegedly, the numbers of the spiritual infant tier were no less than 4, exceeding the 2 of their 100-man group. Everyone was a mass of fear and trepidation, putting all efforts and going all out to cultivate. Else, not only would they be eliminated, but they would also lose their lives. Every group had their strongest person to act as the formation's eye, merging the strength of the other 9 together and taking command. Ling Han's strength was the strongest, so he naturally served as his team's leader, taking up the duty of being the crux of the array. The strength of every group was well balanced. For instance, as to the formidable strength of 2 individual spiritual infant tier, the teammates they were assigned in respect of holistic strength would need to be inferior to other groups. Without doubt, Zhu Xianer would not possibly be assigned to the same group with Ling Han. There was only a total of 6 cultivators at the flower blossom tier and above, so of course they would all be split to each lead a separate group, while the rest of the other 4 groups didn't even have anyone at the flower blossom tier to assume command. But they also did not have to confront anyone at the spiritual infant tier, as there was a fixed task arranged for every group. Those groups that were weak would be assigned to fend off random soldiers, and the results would not be affected because of this reason. 3 days later they set out. That gang of bandits was not far from them, only half a day's travel. Upon reaching the place, Xiao Yongnian then commanded them to launch their attack. It was also the first time Ling Han witnessed the styles of attack of the Purple Moon Empire. Before this, he was looking upon it from the perspective of the 5 great sects, but now, becoming a puny private of the Purple Moon Empire, he got to personally participate in a feeling was naturally different. A group made up of 10 people was practically all-conquering. Now, after layering the strength of the 10 and striking out with half their combined power, even the weakest group would possess the combat strength of the flower blossom tier. All the way, they advanced with an overpowering force, forcing out the 4 spiritual infant tier elites of the bandits, which sparked a fierce battle. Ling Han's performance was quite moderate, as he merely elevated his battle prowess to roughly about 2 battle stars of the spiritual infant tier, leading his 9 teammates to engage the opponents. The fight went on for close to 3 days. In the end, these bandits' forces were thoroughly wiped out. The armed forces also paid the price of 7 killed in battle, while 18 were injured as well. Taking into account that there was altogether only 100 of them, and moreover that the number of elites was much less, this combat success was practically amazing. Even Ling Han also nodded in approval. This was definitely a typical example of a match where the weak defeated the strong. If he were to similarly lead such a large group of people to battle, unless he displayed his true prowess, it would only cause the whole troop to completely perish. 7 people actually died. Xiao Yongnian's face was grim. You lot are really too useless. Among these 7, 3 killed were in Gong Fei Yang's team. 2 killed were in Su Chengwen's team, and another 2 killed in Jian Qizheng's team. Don't think I have not noticed. Were it not for you lot coveting merits in extreme, would your teammates have died? Gong Fei Yang and Su Qing were both at the spiritual pedestal tier. When they heard such words, they could only admit their faults. How would they dare to refute a spiritual infant tier elite? But Jian Qizheng was actually that old man in the spiritual infant tier, and he gave a snort, then retorted, "With the sacrifice of 3 spiritual ocean tier cultivators, we have slain a spiritual infant tier 1. Don't tell me that it is not worth it? What right do you have to decide who lives and who dies?" Xiao Yongnian's expression darkened. On this battlefield, teammates are your sole support, and you actually treat them as chess pieces that can be sacrificed? Who would have the confidence to trust their backs to the likes of you? Scram, you are dismissed. What? Jian Qizheng nearly jumped in a fit of anger. He was an impressive, spiritual infant-tier elite, entirely worthy of being the #1 ace in this training camp. To actually be dismissed now, how did you expect him to accept it? He swept his sleeves out and remarked, "Want me to leave? Also fine. Hand over a complete 8th tier cultivation technique. You think I am willing to suffer here?" All cultivators fought alone. Hence, they were used to living in an unconstrained manner. Many naturally could not adapt to the lifestyle of a military camp. Xiao Yongyan laughed with a sneer and countered, "You did not even pass through the new recruit training, yet still want to ask for cultivation techniques. Are you referring to me?" Jian Qizheng said thickly, "If you don't hand out the cultivation technique, I shall then slaughter every single one of you." He then drew forth a black-colored sword, which looked just like an evil blade. There was already a dark aura twining around the sword's blade, looking incomparably frightening. Chapter 740, 7th Elder of the Yu Family. Chapter 740, 7th Elder of the Yu Family. Henyi, Henyi. Xiao Yongyan put both his hands behind his back and challenged him. "Are you seeking death?" "Ha ha 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 ha. I have hidden my actual strength in these recent days all along, yet you," Jian Qizheng laughed while pointing his finger at Xiao Yongyan. "I have had you thoroughly figured out and learned of your actual strength already. Furthermore, I have also distinctly seen through the secret to this array of cooperative attack. So in my eyes there are weaknesses everywhere, and it's a piece of cake to break such an array. I am giving you the last chance. Hand over the cultivation technique. If you don't want to die, by my hand," he demanded in a stern voice, his expression absolutely horrifying. He gave the black sword in his hand a jerk, and immediately the fearful aura circulated. Xiao Yongyan could not help the abrupt change in his expression. This person was already at the great perfection of the spiritual infant tier, and moreover had a frightening spirit tool. So his battle prowess absolutely exceeded 10 stars. While he was only at the 7th layer of the spiritual infant tier, his battle prowess was also only 8 stars, and he was absolutely not his match. There were not many geniuses among the military officers of the Purple Moon Empire, but in the case of drawn-out combat at close range, they had all developed an ironclad discipline. Teamwork was also well-coordinated. More skilled in fighting on a battlefield, they could perfectly layer up the combat strength of many people and triumph over an enemy that originally could not possibly be defeated. However, individual combat strength, they were really mediocre unless they attained the level of king, or at least general. At least those could battle an opponent 5 battle stars superior to themselves, and their battle prowess would be monstrous. The problem was he was only by himself now, and these new recruits had just received training, so could they be of any use? And the opponent was even aware of certain secret combinations of the array, which were extremely easy to break. "The lot of you returned to the training camp at once." He came to a prompt decision. "Instructor," everyone shouted. "Obey the command." Xiao Yongyan barked sternly. Jian Qizheng laughed scornfully as he jeered. "Want to leave? No one can leave." He would not want to be pursued everywhere and killed by the elites of the Purple Moon Empire. Thus, he wanted to kill off everyone to silence them in that way. Naturally, no one would know about what happened today. "Run!" Xiao Yongyan shouted. "I will hold him back." "Would you be able to hold me back?" Jian Qizheng sneered as he raised his black sword and held it high, but he did not strike it downwards, and was appearing to be seeking a target. Everyone's hearts were full of alarm and fright. This was the combat strength of a peak-level spiritual infant tier. With a spirit tool in his hands, who could oppose him? This was practically like he could look at anyone and that person would die. So how could they not feel intimidated? Ling Han prepared to strike. Fourth, everyone had trained together for 2 months, so no matter what, they had also developed certain camaraderie. Wang. At this moment, a terrifying aura whisked by, drawing a feeling of constriction in everyone's hearts. It was so uncomfortable that they felt like spitting blood. An old man inconspicuously appeared, unimposing in appearance, and indifferently asked, "Which one of you is Ling Han?" Jian Qizhang was just being smug. Abruptly being interrupted, he immediately felt extreme displeasure in his heart, and he coldly uttered, "Who are you? Is it your place to interrupt?" "Pah!" As soon as he finished, his whole body exploded into pieces. Fresh blood splattered onto the bodies of a few people on the side, making them silently groan. Their expressions, unpleasant in the extreme. This was the flesh and blood of a spiritual infant-tier warrior, filled with a frightening aura. It almost made their bodies follow in its wake, as they also wanted to burst. Everyone was panic-stricken to the extreme as they looked upon that old Manha was really too powerful, for his one move could already instantly take care of Jian Qizhang, who was at the peak of the spiritual infant tier. Could it be that he was at the deity transformation tier, or even high-level deity transformation tier? "Senior, may I know how should I address you?" Xiao Yongnian asked as he clasped his fists. Although this old man had helped them get rid of a big disaster, Ling Han was precisely a new recruit under him, and this old man was evidently not here to have tea. As an instructor, he was duty-bound to protect the troops under him. The old man's glance swept across Xiao Yongnian, and he indifferently responded, "My surname is Yu. I do not intend to make an enemy of the Purple Moon Empire. As such, hand over Ling Han, and I shall take my leave right away." Yu. In a flash, it immediately dawned on Ling Han was the seventh elder of the Yu family. Before this, at the Mystery Realm, Ling Han had killed an arrogant bastard named Yu Xian, and strictly speaking. It was Hunyo who killed him, but undoubtedly the score was counted unto him, and now they came to seek revenge. He was a senior heaven-tier elite, absolutely not someone Xiao Yongnian could equal. But, precisely as the seventh elder of the Yu family had said, he had no intention to go against the Purple Moon Empire. Hence, he did not make any move to annihilate them. Otherwise, how would a heaven-tier elite be so obliging? Yet, if Xiao Yongnian were to adamantly hold out, the seventh elder of the Yu clan inevitably would not show mercy. Unwilling to offend did not mean unable to offend. After all, this world was still not belonging to the Purple Moon Empire, and who would dare to look down upon the 5 great sects who knew how solid and profound their power base was? Ling Han resolutely stepped out from the crowd. He was the one who'd caused the trouble, so naturally he could not let others be afflicted with the consequences. Besides, Xiao Yongnian totally could not hold off this disaster at all, so why let him get killed in vain? "Ling Han, go back!" Xiao Yongnian immediately ordered as he caught sight of Ling Han. Ling Han gestured with his hand as he said, "Instructor, this person is the 7th elder of the Yu clan, with cultivation level of the heaven tier." Pooh! Everyone gasped in shock. There was only a few Shattering Void tier elites in the world, and beneath the Shattering Void tier was the heaven tier 1 finger of the ladder was enough to get rid of all of them. Xiao Yongnian was merely slightly dazed as he spoke with resolution. "Nonsense, of course I would safeguard the troops under Moonless I am dead, or else no one can so much as touch a hair on you. Although I do not want to oppose the Purple Moon Empire, since you are determined not to realize the gravity of your mistake, then go die!" The 7th elder of the Yu clan struck forth, slapping in the direction of Xiao Yongnian. Pum! A palm struck over and landed on the ground, revealing a deep hole, but Xiao Yongnian was nowhere to be seen. The gaze of the 7th elder of the Yu clan swept across, revealing a deep expression as he said, "You are unable to defend yourself, yet you still dare to meddle in other people's business." Ling Han put Xiao Yongnian down. Just now, were it not for him moving just in time, bringing Xiao Yongnian to his side, the latter certainly would have had a similar fate as Jian Qizhang, turned into an utterly indiscernible corpse. Xiao Yongnian was astonished from Ling Han's move. He'd already discovered that Ling Han's strength was actually way above his because he absolutely could not possibly have dodged that strike. At least I am still alive now, right? Ling Han smilingly said, and as he let down Xiao Yongyan, he added, Instructor, let me handle it. The seventh elder of the Yu clan was also not in a rush to strike out, and said, You've killed someone from my Yu clan, so you are destined to die. But I am also a reasonable person, and will let you choose how you are to die. How about it? Ling Han roared with hearty laughter, and answered, Then I will choose to die of old age. What do you say? That is not realistic. The seventh elder of the Yu clan sneered. You are destined to die today. I think that may not be the case. A voice rang out. Who? The seventh elder of the Yu family immediately shouted, given his strength. He was actually unable to detect the source of this voice. This voice, how come it sounded faintly familiar? Ling Han mumbled to himself. It was a female voice full of heroic spirit. Show yourself! The seventh elder of the Yu clan shouted again. He unceasingly swiveled his body around, sweeping his gaze all around. Dare to stop me, yet do not dare to show yourself? Then I also couldn't care less, and will just directly kill off this person. He pointed his finger at Ling Han, his killing intent soaring. Get lost at once, else die. That voice rang out again, pretending to be mysterious. The seventh elder of the Yu clan stared fixedly at Ling Han and raised his hand. Chapter 741 Reappearance of Hainyo. Chapter 741 Reappearance of Hainyo. Henyi. Ling Han's expression turned serious. It was a heaven-tier cultivator, and a high-level one at that, far exceeding even the maximum of his present combat strength. If he were to fight head-on, he would probably sustain serious injuries. Of course, if he were to parry merely one move, he definitely would not die. After all, his physique and recovery ability were both very strong. Xian Er, come here. Ling Han beckoned. Naturally, he would not hide in the Black Tower by himself. Fortunately, although Hunyo and Rabbit followed him over, they were waiting at a distant place and did not gather here. Presumably, if they were also seen by the seventh elder of the Yu clan, they would also be overlooked. Zhu Xian Er slowly came over, not daring to move overly swift for fear of triggering a reaction from the seventh elder of the Yu clan. How would the seventh elder of the Yu clan be bothered with Ling Han or Zhu Xian Er, such puny spiritual infant and flower blossoming tier cultivators? He was still searching for the whereabouts of that mysterious person. He exclaimed, Since you would not show yourself, then I shall dismiss my reservations. His raised right hand immediately pressed down in Ling Han's direction. Pa! A person's shadow flew upwards and strongly slammed into the building structure of the bandits' lair. Pang! 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 Directly breaking down about a dozen rooms before coming to a halt. That was the seventh elder of the Yu clan who was actually given a resounding slap, which sent him flying. Hiss! That old man struggled to scramble to his feet. He only felt that at least about a dozen bones in his body were broken, and he was now forcibly putting them back together using origin power. Otherwise, he would not even be able to get up now. Who was this? Wasn't that too strong? One slap already sent him flying without even giving him time to react. He stared over there fixedly, and only caught sight of a masked person appearing at the spot he had been previously standing at. But even if the face was masked, one could also make out from the figure that the person was actually a lady. Slender and graceful, she could be said to be perfect were it not for asterisk being indeed rather flat. Everyone was both startled and delighted even, though they had yet to know the identity of this masked lady. For her to stand against the seventh elder of the Yu clan, it should be a good thing, right? Ling Han's gaze swept across that incomparably flat bosom of the masked lady and blurted out unwittingly, Hainyo. There really weren't that many women with such powerful strength and the chest still so flat. If you dare persist in spouting nonsense, I will kill you, the masked lady snapped coldly. Ling Han bared his teeth and queried, "You've recovered your memories." If it had been Hainyo, then she would have acted silly and cute. But were it Hellion Sun Shui, then she would have acted high and mighty as befitting a senior heaven-tier elite. Judging from the present circumstances, evidently it appeared to be the latter. But why would she step forth and come to his aid? Could it be that she felt that it was more satisfying to kill him with her own hands? Then again, they also did not have much of a score to settle, merely that he had once deceived her. But it was already such a long time ago, why not just dismiss the animosity with a smile? After all, we have lived together for a long time. Hellion Sun Shui did not deign to answer, but merely stared coldly at the seventh elder of the Yu clan and uttered, "Just now I told you to scram, and you didn't. Now you still want to leave." The seventh elder of the Yu clan clasped his hands together as a gesture of respect and offered a truce. "Honorable lord, this person has killed a member of my Yu clan, so it stands to reason that I have come to avenge his death. But since you protect him, then I shall lay this grievance to rest. How about it?" It appeared that Hellion Sun Shui was full of pent-up anger, and at this moment finally found a venting target as she gazed intently at the seventh elder of the Yu clan, her killing aura circulating. Ling Han bared his teeth. He felt that this murderous fury ought to have been directed at himself, but not knowing where or how, this Hainyo seemed to have let her focus gone awry and turned haywire along the way, and actually let him, the real culprit, off the hook and shifted onto the seventh elder of the Yu clan. Wish you good luck, he thought. The seventh elder of the Yu clan was also infuriated. They were both similarly of high-level heaven tier, and he had already set down his stance so low. On top of that, he'd also been given a resounding slap by her, so what more did she want? He flicked his sleeves and stated boldly, "Honorable lord, I am also not one easy to be trifled with." He drew out a green-colored stone tablet. On its surface were closely woven patterns, filled with an ancient air. Ling Han made an exclamation of surprise, knowing that this was certainly an antique. The skill of forging spirit tools had long since been lost, so the cultivators now all nurtured their weapons with the martial willpower and origin power of their own body. Then, as time passed, it naturally became a spirit tool, one with the cultivator, and drew forth their most powerful strength and full capability. But in ancient times, spirit tools were forged by weaponsmiths, with the patterns being inscribed using engraving, which meant the spirit tool would be able to wield its utmost power no matter in whose hands it was, and could even possibly surpass the cultivator's level. A heaven-tier elite, not using the spirit tool, he nurtured himself, actually drew out an ancient spirit toolet, showed that the power of this spirit tool was definitely above the spirit tool of his own. It could not be underestimated. So it was inevitable that Ling Han, given his nature, would feel a bit of an itch, wanting to suck away this stone tablet with the heaven transformation bowl. Most likely, the rock spirit would salivate as well. Nevertheless, Hellion Sun Shui was totally unconcerned, putting one of her hands behind her back and only leveled her outstretched right hand as she fearlessly declared, "Dealing with you one hand is enough." The seventh elder of the Yu clan was seething with anger. He'd long made a name for himself, and Heaven Tier was also considered the top existence of this world. Who would not greet him respectfully after meeting him? Yet now, to actually be looked down upon in such a manner, it made him feel a sense of utter humiliation and disgrace. He drew out the stone tablet, and Wang, this stone tablet immediately flew up, vigorously emitting extraordinary light in midair, while also rapidly enlarging into something like a small mountain peak, which then smashed towards Hellion Sun Shui. No fancy moves, only one word: smash. Hellion Sun Shui's expression revealed a slight tinge of astonishment, for she could sense that this stone tablet's weight now was surprisingly heavy, reckoning it to be even more terrible than a mountain peak's. Ancient people's technique of forging weapons was really amazing. It looked to be the forceful refining of a real mountain into a smaller size, and to be used to directly smash on anyone as and when needed. When the weight reached a certain extent, smashing down would be just like the world's most formidable attack. She snorted, and Z, her body transformed into a thunderbolt, and with unparalleled swiftness struck forth. So fast! Ling Han only felt a blur before his eyes as he totally could not keep track of Hellion Sun, Shue's figure. Given that once he had cultivated the thunderclap ninth heaven, his speed became barely comparable with heaven tier, then Hellion Sun Shue as a heaven tier elite after mastering the thunderclap ninth heaven. How terrifying could her speed be? Even with how superior a shattering void tier cultivator was, with her speed, she should at least be a match for them, right? In a flash, Hellion Sun Shue materialized in front of the seventh elder of the Yu clan, with her delicately tender, snowy white hand directly struck out and pressed onto his forehead. The seventh elder of the Yu clan hastily raised his hand to ward off the blow, a dumbstruck expression on his face as Hellion Sun Shue's speed had far exceeded his expectations. This was too swift already, so swift that he practically didn't even have time to react. Pung, pung, pang, two mighty heaven tier cultivators were locked in fierce combat. But in fact, it was entirely the seventh elder of the Yu clan being beaten up, with absolutely no chance to fight back. Strong, really strong, Ling Han thought to himself. Hellion Sun Shue was, in fact, a genius of the sea race. Not only that her origin power had advanced to the heaven tier, but even with regards to physical skills, she was in no way inferior. This kind of dual cultivation elite naturally could crush origin power cultivators of the same level. Now, she further cultivated a mystical power that strengthened her power even more. It was apparent from a battle between two opponents of the same level how terrifying the strength of the mystical power was. The seventh elder of the Yu clan was boiling with rage, seeing that he could not even touch so much as the side of Hellion Sun Shue, and was only being ruthlessly beaten. He then exploded in a fit of overwhelming rage as he summoned the stone tablet over and had it smashing down his way. You going to dodge or not? If not, I will smash you together as well. Chapter 742. This is your son. Chapter 742. This is your son. Henyi, Henyi. This move was very despicable, yet very effective. Naturally, Hellion Sun Shue had no intention to perish together with him, and her figure immediately flitted, deftly avoiding the smashing range of the stone tablet. The seventh elder of the Yu clan, upon seeing the effectiveness of this move, could not hold back the uncanny cackle that escaped his mouth, spurring this stone tablet to give chase in Hellion Sun Shue's direction. Of course, he knew that with Hellion Sun Shue's speed, it was impossible for him to launch an attack against her, but he could drive her away. What he wanted was Ling Han's life. Hellion Sun Shue seemed to have an immensely apprehensive kind of unease about her, obviously being unwilling to engage in a reckless fight with the seventh elder of the Yu clan. Otherwise, given her strong physique, which was even above Ling Han's, she was absolutely qualified to shake off by force this sort of heavy-type spirit tool. This made Ling Han click his tongue in wonder, unable to comprehend it. Could it be that even now, the memory loss from before was still affecting Hellion Sun Shue, hampering and hindering her movements in fight as if her hands were tied and her feet were bound? The seventh elder of the Yu clan unleashed a torrent of attacks relentlessly, while Hellion Sun Shue successively retreated, instantly bringing about a complete turnabout in the situation. Honorable Lord, I have no wish to be likened to someone being of inexperienced mindset and persist in such unsophisticated pettiness with you. If you were to leave now, I will treat it like nothing ever happened, the seventh elder of the Yu clan exclaimed. He indeed did not want to end up having a feud with such an elite. Hellion Sun Shue merely gave a cold snort, and with a light pat of her snowy white hand, drew forth a whirling motion, giving rise to a wave of origin power. Patterns could be seen visibly gleaming and flashing, their powerful force exceedingly frightening. Then I, too, shall cease wasting words with you." The seventh elder of the Yu clan sneered. Then he abruptly turned around and directed his line of vision straight at Ling Han. "I shall kill you first." This was after all the main objective of his being here in the first place. On this person was a 10,000-year-old treasured bead had to acquire it. Of course, killing Ling Han to avenge the death of Yu clan's descendant was also one of the reasons. But in comparison with a 10,000-year-old treasured bead, it had become something secondary, which he was doing just in passing. Ling Han smiled faintly as he uttered, "Monster, just see how I will subdue you." He tossed out the Heaven Transformation Bowl, which lit up as a series of patterns came alive, emitting a brilliant radiance. Boom, boom, boom. That stone tablet was already rapidly moving towards the Heaven Transformation Bowl, and in the process was also boundlessly reducing in size. What? The seventh elder of the Yu clan was struck with great shock and felt that he was losing his connection with the spirit tool. He let out a violent roar as he charged in Ling Han's direction. He'd obtained this spirit tool in an ancient tomb, and it had helped him kill a few elites of the same level. It was his strongest trump card, and he absolutely could not lose it. On the other hand, what Ling Han wielded was merely a bowl. To actually be able to affect and absorb the stone tablet, this made the elder shocked beyond words, yet also exultant if he could seize this bowl. Then wouldn't he have gained yet another treasured item? His face was awash with greed, and he was stretching out his right hand to clutch Ling Han. "Hum!" A frosty snort filled with disdain suddenly rang out from behind him. Oh no! This thought of his had yet to entirely formulate when he felt a pain in his chest as his body was once again being hit and propelled through the air, seeing the figure of Hellion Sun Shui in his eyes becoming smaller and smaller. Sure enough, he was struck and sent flying again. But this time he was not so lucky, as Hellion Sun Shui caught up to him and started landing brutal strikes on him. Without the spirit tool to safeguard him, how could he match up to Hellion Sun Shui, this royalty of the sea race, who was a dual cultivator of origin power and physical skills, and on top of that possessed secret techniques of the sea race? Her combat strength definitely fearful. In only a short while, the seventh elder of the Yu clan was already beaten and utterly defeated, and had no other choice but to take flight. Heaven Tier was after all Heaven Tier burning up his own life force. His speed was already swift beyond reasonable limits, reaching the level comparable with Hellion Sun Shui's. However, such damage was irreversible. His life origin was being drained, which was going to shorten his lifespan at least by a few dozen years. But as opposed to being beaten to death by Hellion Sun Shui then and there, he naturally would not care to live a few dozen years shorter. Hellion Sun Shui could also give chase if she wanted to, but she'd similarly have to burn her own life for Sesh definitely catch up to him. But she was naturally unwilling to. She only made 2 steps in pursuit before halting and making a turnabout to look for Ling Han. "My lady, thank you for extending your assistance. The Purple Moon Empire will surely reward you. But should you act in any way that may bring harm upon Ling Han, you still have to pass through me first," Xiao Yongnian declared, stepping out to block Hellion Sun Shui's way. This was the Purple Moon Empire's belief. Being the leader, he should look out for and protect his followers, or how else would the followers be inclined to commit their lives for their cause? Hellion Sun Shui stretched out her hand and gave a flick, easily setting Xiao Yongnian aside. Then she stood in front of Ling Han, her gaze flickering as if hesitating over something. "Hainyo, whatever the matter, we can all sit down and talk at length about it. There's nothing that can't be talked over," Ling Han smilingly said. He had already put away the stone tablet. The rock spirit's breakthrough to the deity transformation tier was near at hand, and if he could still refine this stone tablet, then Heaven Tier would not be that far already. Then only could he be considered a hired thug. Hellion Sun Shui stretched out her hand and lifted Ling Han up with her grip, Then she turned around and left. Stupid Niu! Stupid Niu! Hu Niu sprang out and hurriedly chased after Hellion Sun Shui. She could care less about everything else, but absolutely couldn't allow Ling Han to be snatched by someone else. Little girl, wait for Rabbit. Rabbit also hastily followed suit and gave chase. Zhu Xian'er was not slow, either, but her cultivation was the weakest, hence she could only fall behind in the last place. Xiao Yongyan struggled to rise, yet felt a pain in his chest. He slowly took in a deep breath and sat down on the ground. Meanwhile, who amongst the new recruits would dare to give chase? She was a heaven-tier elite. If they pursued, did that mean they were trying to deliver her their heads? She did not launch a full-blown massacre, and that was already merciful beyond any conventions. But don't take life for granted. Back to the training camp. Xiao Yongyan also knew that to let these new recruits pursue and attack was not realistic. The only way was to pass the matter on to the higher-ups. Although it was only one new recruit, the Purple Moon Empire would not permit anyone to bully their own, and there definitely would be an elite rushing over perhaps a general or even a king. Hellion Sun Shui unceasingly forged ahead while clutching Ling Han. Her speed was astonishing, and even with the extra burden of Ling Han, her speed did not slow down much. After journeying for a very long time, she finally came to a stop and tossed him onto the ground. Ling Han did not hide in the Black Tower. If Hellion Sun Shui had wanted to kill him, she would not have lugged him along. He patted his rear and stood up as he protested. I see your temper has grown. Hellion Sun Shui stared at him ferociously, then suddenly struck forth, pung, 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 giving him a sound beating. Similarly, although her blows were heavy, none was fatal. As such, Ling Han only used his strength to shield his handsome face. Other parts? Well, go ahead and hit. He only felt odd this Hai Niu was really becoming more and more abnormal. After Hellion Sun Shui had had her fill of beating, she finally stopped. She took off her cape, revealing the baby that was bundled up and which she was carrying behind her back. The baby was in deep sleep and blissful oblivion while sucking onto one of his fingers, looking extremely adorable. No wonder she had not fought recklessly against that stone tablet earlier. It should have been for her fear of hurting the baby. Otherwise, given her strength and temperament, so what if she forcefully fought it on? Could it be that this was her son? Hellion Sun Shui carried the baby in her arms and gazed upon the child for a while. Then she handed the child over towards Ling Han as she warned in all seriousness. Take good care of him, but if you were to so much as loose a single strand of hair on his body, I will kill you 10,000 times over. Ling Han instinctively caught the bundle, then scratched his head in bafflement as he remarked somewhat bemusedly, I don't seem to have the habit of raising kids for others. Had this Hai Niu's mind been slapped silly and gone nuts again, that she'd actually want him to rear children? This is your son, Hellion Sun Shui said angrily. Chapter 743 really became a father. Chapter 743 really became a father. Henny, this is your son. Pooh! Ling Han instantly choked, then countered. Oi! Though our relationship may be considered somewhat close, you should not spout nonsense. I am still a virgin. How would there be a son? You want me to raise a child for you and be a good Samaritan? Fine, but I won't be a fool. Hellion Shui was furious. Clutching onto his chest, she lifted him up effortlessly and snapped. Are you blind? Didn't you see the striking resemblance your son has to you? He is the spitting image of you. Ling Han looked intently. It was really hard for him to say much. In this life, he truly had only looked in the mirror a handful of times, so his familiarity with his own features had been regarding his past life all this while. He could not help but bare his teeth in the future if he were to have any children with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden or Zhu Xian'er. Then would the kid be considered his or his predecessor's? Oh, what a mess! This matter is seemingly hard to work out. Helian's son, Xue, became even more furious. He still dared let your mind wander at this moment? She gave Ling Han a shake and reiterated, Listen, this is your son. Raise him well. When I come back, if I were to discover his missing even a single strand of hair, I will mince you to pieces and feed you to the fishes. Ling Han made a waving gesture with his hand and said in response, Fine, I shall believe that he is really my son, for the time being. Of course, he is your son. Helian Sun Xue interrupted. Ling Han sighed in exasperation and pointed out, How come I don't remember having done that with you? A becoming blush spread out over Helian Sun Xue's pretty face, yet with her face masked, she feared not at being seen. She mumbled, Have you forgotten about that time when obtaining the thunderclap, ninth heaven? Ling Han was startled. At that time, this foolish girl charged into the thunderclap region, and he wanted to pull her back, but in the end was also whirled in by the thunderclap, and both their clothes were torn to pieces and entangled together. Could it be that during that time he had actually slept with this girl by accident? Fuck, my virgin body. Ling Han gave a miserable cry in his ear that had actually lost this life's first time in a state of vagueness. He stammered slightly, Really such a bullseye? One time and conceived already? You think I wanted this? Helian Sun Xue was riled once again, raising her fist to hit, yet still managed to refrain from doing so. Not long after I returned to the sea race, I discovered I was with a child, so I went into hiding and was planning to deliver the baby in secret. However, the truth still leaked out. Now, I am being hunted down by my clan and the Xinyu royal clan, two mighty forces. Otherwise, would I need you to take care of the child? Ling Han did not ask her why she did not abort the baby. With a face full of amazement, he was looking intently at his son, filled with awe. He actually had a son already. In his past life, he was obsessed with alchemy. Although there were countless beauties who threw themselves into his arms, he actually would not even look at them twice. Now, a child of his own, with his flesh and blood, actually lay in his arms as if immediately giving rise to a certain kind of spiritual connection, making him feel extremely excited and emotionally moved. I have a son already. He raised his head and looked at Helian Sun Xue. Apologies that I only bore you one, and did not give you a daughter as well, so that you may have both a son and a daughter. Helian Sun Xue gritted her teeth, adamantly holding onto animosity. Ling Han was wild with joy, and without thinking much, replied, Never mind, we can still have one later on. Helian Sun Xue was indignant. She once again clutched and lifted Ling Han up. You still want to do me? What a violent female dragon. Ling Han secretly harbored admiration for himself, actually had become a brave man who had mounted the dragon. He patted Helian Sun Xue's hand and cajoled her indulgently. You have already borne me a son. Then, of course, you are part of my Ling clan. Hereafter, I won't allow you to run around anymore. You are to take good care of my child. Still really tyrannical and overbearing, Helian Sun Xue coldly snorted and uttered, Why did you think I sought you out? Were it not for me being chased by two mighty forces, don't think that you would ever see me in this whole life. For now, you take good care of our child. I know you have a spirit tool that can take in living beings, so if our child were to stay at that place of yours, no one would discover him. I will divert the attention of the pursuers. If I do not die, the child you must hand over to me, and we shall never be in contact at all. What's this rubbish you are spouting? Ling Han was also becoming angry. Without me, would you have been able to conceive the child by yourself? I don't care how I slept with you at that time, now that you are my woman, and have also even borne me a son already. Do you think I will just watch you die? Helian Sun Xue felt slightly touched by Ling Han's words, but she immediately rebuked, Don't let your emotions affect you. You are totally unaware of the formidable strength of Helian and Xinyu, the two mighty royal clans. Just in terms of shattering void tier elites, There are already 30 odd of them. There are even more so up to several hundred of heaven-tier cultivators, and this is just merely one clan, not two. Indeed, they were very strong. But when he recalled that the 5 great sects at least also had over 100 shattering void-tier elites, Ling Han then became unconcerned. He then remarked, "You only know that I have a spirit tool that can take in living beings. But what you don't know is actually what is the extent of the strength of this spirit tool. Fine. Don't resist my divine sense from wrapping around you, and I shall bring you into it to experience it. Hee, once you've entered into the Black Tower, then you can just take care of our child in earnest." Given choice, Hellion Sun Shui naturally also would not want to be apart from her son. So she hesitated for a moment, then decided, "Fine, come on." Ling Han wrapped his divine sense around Hellion Sun Shui and his son, and the 3 of them entered into the Black Tower together. What? Hellion Sun Shui was shocked. This space was actually so huge. This was practically a mystery realm. "So how is it?" Ling Han said with a smile, "When I have also entered into this place, the spatial spirit tool will then transform into a mustard seed, and even a shattering void tier elite also would not be able to discover it, so it will be entirely safe here." In a flash, something suddenly dawned on Hellion Sun Shui. It was no wonder that the first time she stumbled upon Ling Han, as she struck forth a blow towards him, Ling Han actually vanished into thin air all of a sudden. It turned out it was because of having such a rare treasure. "Fine, I will stay here a while first. Hide for 10 to 20 years. Wait for the unrest to subside and the turmoil to calm somewhat. Then depart." Giving a nod, she acceded. "Yeah." The child suddenly woke up. Yet when he discovered that he was being held by a stranger, he did not cry and just gazed at Ling Han wide-eyed, the black and white of his big eyes in stark contrast. He even stretched out his chubby small hand and grinned as he grabbed towards Ling Han's face. Ling Han could not contain the strong paternal love that surged through him as he voluntarily brought his face closer and let his son grab it. The kid promptly gave a hearty laugh while he kept on rubbing Ling Han's face as if treating it as a plaything. Ling Han smiled as he said, "The kid's strength is really strong. He will definitely show promise in future." This was not just mere boasting or singing one's own praises, for the kid's strength was indeed great, and in no way below that of the 9th layer of the body refining tier. Hellion Sun Shui proudly exclaimed, "That is a given. His true dragon bloodline is even above that of mine. It must be the genes of my Ling clan." Ling Han directly disregarded her words. Hellion Sun Shui's pretty face twitched. This man was really shameless. It was obviously because the son possessed the true dragon bloodline that he could have had such horrifying, tremendous strength. And how could the human race possibly accomplish that? "Wu-wah!" the kid suddenly cried. Ling Han was at a loss and queried, "What's the matter?" Hellion Sun Shui rolled her eyes at him, then replied, "Our son is hungry already." She took the kid back into her arms and was just about to raise her shirt, but then she actually gave Ling Han a pointed stare. She ordered, "Why aren't you turning around?" "Tisk, it's not like it's something I've not seen before. Moreover, it's so flat. Who would want to look at it?" Ling Han spread out his hands and turned around. Hellion Sun Shui ground her teeth and felt like killing someone again. Chapter 744, Hidden Formidable Enemy. Chapter 744, Hidden Formidable Enemy. Henny. Hellion Sun Shui nursed her son, but as she did, she wondered that if she was in Ling Han's company for the whole day, would that bastard annoy her to death? "Hey, they've caught up to us," Ling Han suddenly said. "You stay here first. I will bring the other people in." He flashed out of the Black Tower. Hunyo and Rabbit had already caught up to them. "Ling Han." Hunyo immediately jumped into Ling Han's embrace. Ling Han nodded and asked, "Where is Xian Er?" Hunyo shrugged and said, "She doesn't want Ling Han," and ran off. "Quick, let's go. Don't want that heartless woman already." All day long, She was only thinking how to get rid of that beguiling woman, Zhu Xian'er. Ling Han laughed heartily, his eyes revealing mirth. Activating the Eye of Truth, he had just seen Zhu Xian'er approaching them quickly, and went up to greet her. As for Zhu Xian'er, when she saw Ling Han, she calmed down and expressed her relief as if a huge burden had been lifted off her shoulders. "AI, so not fun." Hunyo spread out her hands and bit her fingers, secretly blaming herself for not making a move to kill Zhu Xian'er just a moment ago. "Where is Miss Hellion?" asked Zhu Xian'er. "Inside the Black Tower. I will take all of you to see her, and also my son," Ling Han said. "What?" Both Zhu Xian'er and Hunyo dropped their jaws. When did he have a son? How come they didn't know about it? Rabbit, having no idea about the issue with Hellion Sun Shui, said, "Congratulations! Red packets, please one." Ling Han didn't know how to explain. He had also just gotten to know about it. With a wave of his hand, everyone was brought into the Black Tower. As his divine sense swept through the place, he found that Hellion Sun Shui had already fed his son. He then brought the group of people to her side. "Big silly girl." Hunyo glared at Hellion Sun Shui. Really too hateful. This big silly girl had actually given birth to Ling Han's child in secret. Hellion Sun Shui naturally had already experienced Hunyo's jealousy. She just smiled and said, "Little girl." This was considered a tit for tat. What a cute baby. Naturally, Zhu Xian'er's emotional intelligence was not something that Hunyo could match. "Can I hold him?" "Yes." Hellion Sun Shui handed her son over to Zhu Xian'er. The little guy turned over, opened his mouth, and leaned towards Zhu Xian'er's bosom and bit. Bashful, Zhu Xian'er quickly held the little guy further away. The little guy did not manage to get a bite and immediately began to wail. Ling Han burst out laughing and said, "Hainyo, you see, even our son turned his back against your flat chest. Oh, I really pity my son. It's probably because he usually didn't eat to his fill. Ling Han, do you want to die?" Hellion Sun Shui couldn't help but be furious as he had touched her sore spot. Ling Han took his son into his arms, asking, "Does the little guy have a name yet?" "No." Hellion Sun Shui shook her head. "Smart of you. Otherwise, I'd smack your behind," said Ling Han. He pondered for a while and said, "What should I name him? Since he is the son of me, Ling Han, in the future, he will definitely be the world's most awesome person. Then, let's call him Ling Niu Bai too." Hunyo suggested, "Well, although it sounds awesome, but such a high-profile name wouldn't be good." Ling Han shook his head. "Then, let's call him Ling Gao Shou III." Hunyo was simply unreliable. Zhu Xian'er interrupted, "How about Ling Jian Shui?" Hellion Sun Shui snorted. Actually, Ling Jian Shui did have quite a special meaning. Ling represented Ling Han, whereas Shui represented her. The word Jian thus added the finishing touch to the name. It was just that, did she actually like to see Ling Han for? "Probably it would be better to call him Ling de Bao 5, said the rabbit. Hellion Sun Shui rolled her eyes. These people, how could one be less reliable than the other? She said, "Better to call him Ling Jian Shui then." At least this was still a normal name. Ling Han became quite upset. This was his firstborn son. How could his son's name be decided just like that without seeking his opinion first? "Then what do you suggest?" Hellion Sun Shui glared at him and said, "The names that you have given like Hunyo Shaoshi. N. Shaoshi equals direct Chinese translation for small rock, Hainyo. Honestly, it's better that you stay out of it." Hunyo immediately became dissatisfied and said, "Nyo's name is very good." Haha. Hellion Sun Shui and Zhu Xian'er both put on a fake smile. They naturally wouldn't agree. Hunyo bared her teeth, revealing 2 rows of small white teeth threateningly, and said, What are you laughing at? Do you think Niu's name is not good? Good. Of course it is good. Ling Han lifted up Hunyao. Our Hunyao not only has a good name, but will also be a beautiful woman in the future. Everyone will love her, and even flowers will bloom for her. Hunyao smiled proudly at once, holding Ling Han's neck. Ling Han is the best. Ling Han's heart felt moved, and he asked Hellion Sun Shui, "How did you come over? Wasn't there a regional barrier?" Hellion Sun Shui answered disdainfully, "That was just an obstacle created by the shattering void tier. One could easily cross over as long as one held a level 10 spirit tool." "Oh, do you have a level 10 spirit tool?" "The genetics of the sea race are absolutely beyond your imagination," Hellion Sun Shui replied arrogantly. Ling Han smiled and said, "Then, did the sea race have a record of a reckoning every 10,000 years?" "Hey, how do you know?" Hellion Sun Shui asked in shock. "I am your man. How can I not be awesome?" Ling Han said. Hellion Sun Shui didn't object to this point and said, "I intend to search for the Vial of Curses and unify the Northern Sea, gathering all the powers of the sea region to fight against the reckoning in the future." Ling Han shook his head and said, "It seems that you still don't know the real purpose of the reckoning. And what would that be?" Hellion Sun Shui asked. As Ling Han told her about the realm pill, Hellion Sun Shui could not help but feel shocked beyond words. After quite a while, she said, "No wonder there are often lapses in history. I've only managed to piece together a rough idea through the tracing of clues and poring over countless tattered ancient books. So this is the case." Suddenly her expression changed, and she said, "The Imperial Clan! The Imperial Clan has survived for thousands of years and could exist forever. Did they actually take part in it as well?" Furrowing his brows, Ling Han said, "If they could exist forever, then wouldn't they be accomplices of the immortal realm? If not, then they would be in existence on a different level, so they could avoid the reckoning." Hellion Sun Shui shook her head and said, "I am afraid that the possibility of them being accomplices may be higher. I have proposed several times to fight against the reckoning, but it has all been suppressed by the Imperial Clan. Obviously, they don't want any issues to keep arising. In other words, our enemies are not only the 5 great sects, but also the Imperial Clan of the sea race." Ling Han held his chin. "What is the strength of the Imperial Clan?" "Extremely strong." Hellion Sun Shui nodded. "It is said that there are hundreds of shattering void tier elites within the Imperial Clan. Furthermore, it holds a well-established position, worshipped by the 4 seas. It is capable of mobilizing the power of the entire sea region." The sea was a 3-dimensional structure, coupled with larger areas of sea area. There were actually more living creatures there. There were also many kinds of spirit herbs in the sea, so the overall strength was actually above the human races. If it wasn't because the sea race had preferred the water environment, in the event they attacked the mainland, then the well-established position of the human race would no longer be guaranteed. Ling Han couldn't help but appear solemn. Originally, the Purple Moon Empire needed only face the 5 great sects, but now there might be an additional sea race, and it had much stronger power. Chapter 745, Return to North Region. Chapter 745, Return to North Region. Henny, I've got to send a message to the Purple Moon Empire, Ling Han said. Now, he and Ma Duo Bao could be considered allies, although his own strength was not worth mentioning. If the sea race were to suddenly launch an attack, and attacked from both sides together with the 5 great sects, then the Purple Moon Empire was likely to be wiped out. Since Hellion Sun Shui was already one of his own people, Ling Han had explained the plan to split open the skies to her, which caused Hellion Sun Shui to feel shock beyond comparison. She had only thought of unifying the Northern Sea, and then to use the strength of the Northern Sea to resist the reckoning. She didn't expect Ling Han to have such a big ambition, wanting to split open the skies and allow the entire realm to ascend into the realm of the immortals. You don't have to worship me like this. It's good enough to know it in the heart. I am not a vain person, Ling Han said, smiling. In front of his own people, he didn't mind to add in a few words of teasing. Show off! Hellion Sun Shui rolled her eyes at him, and actually looked quite sassy. Had it not been that her chest was too flat, she would be extremely attractive. I will bring the news to the Purple Moon Empire first. Then we will return to the North region. Ling Han said, they will fight to their heart's content in the Middle State. We will first unify the East, South, West, and North, the 4 regions. Should Ma Duobao win, I will then give him the country and have him split open the sky. If he can't, then I will. Relatively speaking, the Middle State was in fact the central area of the war. Its area was bigger than the 4 regions combined, but one also couldn't underestimate the 4 regions. One had to know that the population of the desolate North was close to 1 billion, and the power of the nation of every country could spark the rise of a flower blossom tier leader would still be quite staggering. Let us surround the city with villages, Ling Han said, laughing. They came out from the Black Tower and headed towards the training camp. After Xiao Yongnian was found by them, Ling Han asked him to hand over a letter either to the Flame King or the Lunar King. The letter informed that the Sea race was likely to send troops. This was so that Ma Duobao could make preparations. Yet, Xiao Yongnian was somewhat troubled and stared at Hellion Sun Shui as if he wanted to snatch her away for some interrogation. Ling Han quickly smiled and said, "This is my wife and the child's mother. She wouldn't leave and was playing around with me." Xiao Yongnian couldn't help but wear a strange expression. He muttered in his heart, "Both of you make a weird couple." So much foreplay displayed without a consideration for others who might not be immune to it. However, since Hellion Sun Shui was an elite of the heaven tier, he naturally dared not underestimate Ling Han's letter. It had to be submitted. However, he was just a colonel. It would be impossible to see the 8 kings directly. Therefore, he only passed this letter up to the level of general. Naturally, there would be big shots who would give due consideration to the letter, and whether to continue sending it up the ladder or otherwise, they decide. Ling Han again secretly returned to the Restore Heaven Academy. After changing his appearance, he contacted the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, telling them of his plan and leaving them with a lot of alchemical pills. He further called over Yuan Cheng He and the Li siblings to return together with him to the North region. After more than a month, they returned to the North region. Ling Han had reached the peak of the spiritual infant tier, but he wasn't in a hurry to rush towards the deity transformation tier. He intended to tamp his current level until he could no longer go further before he broke through to the next and achieved the ultimate maximum of his capacity. Actually, Zhu Xianer had dashed into the spiritual infant tier, and the rock spirit had taken the lead as the first to break through into the deity transformation tier. With the great power of a spirit of one of the 5 elements, a breakthrough was comparable to an existence of the peak of the deity transformation tier, although still not able to defeat Ling Han. It could be considered the 3rd most powerful elite on this side. The rate of cultivation of Yuan Cheng, He, and the others was extremely fast, following close to an alchemy emperor. How could they fear not having medicine to consume? If it wasn't because Ling Han was afraid that upgrading the cultivation level by means of consuming alchemical pills would lead to instability, it was estimated that Yuan Cheng he would have already charged into the deity transformation tier. This being the case, Yuan Cheng he had also reached the peak of the spiritual infant tier, and his cultivation level was on the same level as Ling Han. The Li siblings had also reached the peak of the flower blossom tier in quick succession, and were not rushing to upgrade their levels. Following Ling Han's advice, they would do their utmost to improve their foundation. These people were the backbone for Ling Han in building country, although they might be a bit pitiful at the moment. Ling Han had 2 level 10 spiritual tools. When he came to the region's barrier, he simply took one of them out. When he touched the barrier, the spiritual tool recovered automatically and created a screen of light which protected them as they left without being affected at all. The barrier was used to isolate the 3 levels of spiritual infant, deity transformation, and heaven tiers. Against a shattering void tier, it would be useless. The existence of the region's barrier is so that the elites would not be able to communicate, leading to the decline of the martial arts of the 4 regions and conveniently providing better control, Ling Han lamented. If it weren't for the 5 great sects, the martial arts of the realm ought to be flourishing. We would have been able to enter into the mortal realm after reaching the shattering void tier and no longer have to consume the natural resources of this world, thus giving birth to more powerful elites. This was what the 5 great sects had caused through these 10,000 years. At least in his past life, these region barriers did not exist. Perhaps due to the revolt of Zishuesian, the 5 great sects were even stricter in controlling the communication between the regions. After entering the North region, their speed had dropped. It wouldn't take long for them to return to the desolate north. Night fell. It was the first time that they had stopped for the night and not continued to hurry on their journey. A campfire was made and food was being cooked. The delicious but strange tentacles soup was brought out again, and with the addition of the essence of the Moriarty's treasured pearl and a few drops of spiritual fluid, it became an extremely nourishing supplement. At this time, the gluttons were not limited to just Ling Han and Hunyao. Helian Sun Shui was both a heaven-tier elite and body arts cultivator, so her appetite wasn't lacking in any way. The 3 people were grabbing for food, causing Hunyao to keep grinding her teeth. This silly big girl. She not only snatched her Ling Han, but also grabbed her food. Really too awful. They decided to take a good rest tonight and rid themselves of the exhaustion for the past few days. Due to the fear of the sea race's pursuit, they naturally entered the Black Tower to rest, as it was the safest place. Ling Han had coaxed his son and Hunyao, these 2 children, to sleep. He was about to fall asleep himself when he saw Helian Sun Shui walk over. "What, still not sleeping?" he asked. Helian Sun Shui did not answer, her eyes flickering with an ominous glint. When she came over, she pushed Ling Han down onto the bed and started groping him all over. Hey, what are you doing?" Ling Han was shocked. Was her desire really so strong? "You slept with me, but don't want to bear the responsibility?" Helian Sun Shui said through clenched teeth. "I am not that kind of person. If you want to say anything, please do so nicely. What's the meaning of you taking my clothes off?" Ling Han mumbled weakly. "Hey, you've already gotten into my bed, making me think of you every few days. You don't want to take up responsibility for it?" Helian Sun Shui continued to pull off his clothes. "Let me count for you. How many times did you owe me within this year?" Was the nature of a dragon lewd. Ling Han shivered, saying, "Do you plan on making me return everything to you tonight? Don't tell me that you're incapable." Helian Sun Shui stared at Ling Han disdainfully. "I'm incapable." Ling Han was angered. Men hated the word incapable. He immediately rolled over and came on top of her. "You'd better not ask for mercy." "Bring it on." Helian Sun Shui naturally wasn't scared. "You already gave birth to a son. I don't believe that I'm unable to make you submit." Ling Han snorted. "Don't waste your energy talking." "Then where should I spend it on?" "Focus on what you are doing." Chapter 746, that night. Chapter 746, that night. Henyi. A night had passed, and Ling Han felt a kind of faint melancholy. In the heated exchange with Helian Sun Shui, he had had absolute dominance and gained the upper hand during the first half, tossing her about as she wailed, "Don't. But women were really odd creatures, for they said don't, but in actual fact enjoyed it tremendously. After that, in the second half, it turned into him being the one that was crying, "Don't. and in the end being turned over by the female dragon, who became the master, conversely tossing him about. Why was this so? The inexperienced Ling Han summed this all up as his level now being inferior to the other parties. Regardless of origin power level or level of brute force, perhaps he could only compete with the her after he broke through to the heaven tier. At this moment, he was still lying on the bed, resting, while Hellion Sun Shui was already in front of the mirror, combing through her soft tresses. The black hair akin to a waterfall was in stark contrast to the fair ivory of her satiny, smooth skin. "Have you not looked your fill?" Hellion Sun Shui gazed at Ling Han through the bronze mirror, her cheerful mood obvious in the slightly upturned corners of her lips. Ling Han let out a sigh and replied dryly, "I was thinking that hereafter I will have to work hard to diligently knead those 2 small mounds on your bosom into 2 peaks, or else if you were to cover your face with your hair, who would know whether it's your front or your back?" Ling Han. Hellion Sun Shui instantly flew into a storming rage. "You want to die," she spat out word by word. "Well, it's already a fact that you have small breasts, anyway," Ling Han whispered under his breath, but did not provoke this woman any further. She was, after all, the mother of his child. The 2 of them came out of the house and saw that Hu Niu was looking after the child, playing fly, fly, fly with Ling Jian Shui, all of a sudden flinging the kid into the air as high as a few thousand meters, after which she caught him into her arms just as he was close to reaching the ground. The kid was ecstatic, his acute excitement evident in his incessant screams of delight, blissfully unaware that Hellion Sun Shui was actually scared to death witnessing such an act. So long as Hu Niu were to carelessly miss, then her son would definitely fall to his death into broken pieces. She hastily leaped into the air and flew over, swiftly taking her son into her protective embrace. She then turned towards Ling Han and demanded, "Quick, you tell her properly." This little girl was only but a child herself, not knowing the severity or grave nature of such precarious acts, which could quite possibly bring about a mishap at any minute. Ling Han nodded and walked over and gently admonished, "Can only play fly, fly, fly in here, but not outside." "En," Hu Niu promised in a crisp, clear voice. Hellion Sun Shui felt like fainting out of exasperation. Was that even considered a warning? What she didn't know was that there was still small tower's existence here. How would it possibly let anything go amiss with Ling Han's son? Hu Niu held Ling Han's hand and walked over to have breakfast. The others also woke up one after another, then, after washing up, sat waiting to partake of their meals. In fact, with their strength, it did not matter whether they ate or not, but given the food in the Black Tower was so tasty and furthermore also highly nourishing, of course it was something not to be missed. Ling Han gathered the ingredients, then Zhu Xian, Li Zixian, and Hellion Sun Shui all went about getting busy. "Ling Han, yesterday you and that big stupid girl had a fight?" Niu heard her cries and screams. It was most gratifying, and Niu even wanted to rush over to help you. "Just that I couldn't get in," Hu Niu remarked while waiting anxiously. "Pa!" Hellion Sun Shui suddenly knocked down a pot of clear water by accident, then directed a murderous gaze at Hu Niu. Someone had actually eavesdropped through the wall last night. The faces of Zhu Xian and Li Zixian flushed bright red. Although they were both unmarried, chaste young ladies, yet in the dead of night, with everyone already asleep, a man and a woman fought. It didn't take much to figure out that it was the kind of fight for adults only. Ling Han seemingly was also struck by a sudden coughing fit as he cleared his throat and chided, "Little children need to sleep more to grow up faster. Go to bed earlier from now on. Don't become a night owl." Hu Niu gave an "oh," pointing her finger at Hellion Sun Shui's chest, and said, "Niu will definitely sleep early. Must not become like big stupid Niu, so flat-chested." Hellion Sun Shui was driven mad today. It was already not the first time that she was being criticized for having a flat chest. So what of a flat chest? Did it cause you any hindrance? Ling Han roared with hearty laughter and brought Hunyo to sit on his lap. That's why Hunyo must eat more meat, have more milk and vegetables, and eat more of everything. And this one Nyo likes. Hunyo was all smile saint, eating precisely her inborn attribute. After breakfast, they left the Black Tower and continued to hasten on with the journey. Zhu Xian had felt a little resentful all along. Ling Han, before reuniting with his old flame, had undoubtedly said that he would not speak of love, yet in the end, this guy directly got a son already, making her feel very jealous. No matter what, she was the one who'd met Ling Han first, but it was Hellion Sun Shui who first gave birth to a son. While no one was paying attention, she moved near to Ling Han and whispered to him, "Xian also wants to bear you children." Ling Han couldn't stop his heart from throbbing. Zhu Xian's beauty was not any less than the heavenly phoenix divine maidens, and they had also gone through thick and thin together. Sentiment between them had already surpassed that of friendship. But because of the conflict in his heart, it had drifted slightly further away from being love. But this did not stop Ling Han from appreciating the other's beauty. She was an extraordinarily beautiful woman, her beauty unrivaled and devastating, enough to cause the fall of a city. Whoever looked upon her would find her pleasing to both the eye and the mind. With those words coming out from the mouth of such extreme beauty, wishing to bear one's own children, Ling Han naturally felt his mouth dry. He patted Zhu Xian's sweet-smelling shoulder and remarked, "Thank you, but my affair with Hai Niu was rather muddle-headed." Then last night was also muddle-headed? Zhu Xian's beautiful eyes were filled with a myriad of emotions revolving in their depths. This put Ling Han on the spot. After all, he could not say that he was unable to resist the female dragon's strength and was being forcefully getting laid. Who would believe it? Within the Black Tower, his existence was akin to that of a god, so could he not have safeguarded his innocence? Ling Han only laughed dryly. Luckily, Zhu Xian's emotional intelligence was after all of an extremely high level, so she would not make Ling Han be stuck in an embarrassing situation, unable to back down with good grace. She was only pressing and being forceful in such a way to let Ling Han know and not let to forget there was still someone infatuated with him who was still persistently waiting for him. 7 days later, they passed through the Fallen Moon Gorge and returned to the desolate north. First of all, of course, they'd see his parents. The traveling group arrived at the Ling clan residence. The footmen still recognized Ling Han and immediately dashed off to announce the news. "Young master is back." This was like a whirlwind having swept through the entire Ling clan residence. Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchang hurriedly rushed out. Their son had been away for over a year, making them wait for his return anxiously, their hearts wrought with extreme worry. Lu Yutong and Li Sichan followed close behind Ling Han's parents. Their coy expressions were filled with feelings of affection, distinctly touching to the heart, making Ling Han inwardly heave a sigh. It seemed the love debts he had accumulated had become somewhat more. Zhu Xian and Hellion Sun Shui naturally were known faces. Yu Hongchang looked at Li Zixian and thought in her heart, could this be another prospective daughter-in-law candidate? This child. Everyone had their eyes fixed on Ling Jianshui, who was being carried in the arms of Hellion Sun Shui. Ling Han laughed mischievously and beamed. "Father, mother, this is your grandson. His name is Ling Jianshui." Both parents were elated. There were 3 ways to be unfilial, but having no sons was the worst. Their son was always not around, yet suddenly brought back a grandson off course that made them wild with joy. The eyes of both Lu Yutong and Li Sichan cast on Ling Han were those of resentment, similar to those of Zhu Xian's, as well there was almost enough to gather for a round of mahjong. At night, the Ling clan residence hosted an elaborate feast to celebrate the addition of the 3rd generation to the Ling clan, the flourishing of the family. After this night, Ling Han then went to the Rain Country. He wanted to take over the imperial authority of the Rain Country to open up the path towards conquest. Chapter 747, Making a Grand Move. Chapter 747, Making a Grand Move. Henyi. Before coming back, Ling Han specifically went to meet with the Rain Emperor and tell him about this matter, whereby he had also obtained the Rain Emperor's agreement. Given so, the Rain Emperor then wrote a letter and asked Ling Han to deliver it on his behalf to Qi Changyu and have him cooperate with Ling Han. In relation to splitting the skies, Ling Han would not care about Qi Changyu's feelings whether willing or not. He still had to abdicate. Ling Han set out on the journey alone, while the others started to pack up had to move again. In the future, when Ling Han ascended onto the throne, the family naturally also had to live in the imperial palace. The present desolate north, in Ling Han's eyes, was indeed tiny, even pitiful. He transformed into a thunderbolt, his speed so swift it was astonishing. Not even half a day later, he already came upon Rain Country and unceremoniously invited himself straight into the imperial palace. What audacity! To dare to intrude into the imperial palace. Die! Ling Han did not bother covering up his tracks, and casually strode in just like that, immediately drawing numerous attacks from the guards. Pa. But these people had only just raised their weapons, yet one after the other then fell to the floor, their complexions turning pale, their bodies shivering spasmodically. Ling Han merely subtly exuded a bit of his aura, yet with his current level at the peak of the spiritual infant tier, was this little bit of aura not awesome enough? In the past, when Feng Yan was determined to unroll the spiritual infant tier decree, he had almost wiped out the entire imperial capital, let alone Ling Han, who was here in person, who knew how many more times powerful that was. Sir, this is the Rain Country Imperial Palace. An old man appeared. He was at the spiritual pedestal tier and was actually able to withstand Ling Han's aura. Evidently, he was a ruler of martial arts. Otherwise, he would have long since submitted without a fight. A smile broke across his face as Ling Han remarked, I am here to look for Qi Changyu. How audacious! That spiritual pedestal tier was indignant, and with his finger pointing at Ling Han, thundered, to have the impertinence to directly utter His Imperial Majesty's name, treason. Ling Han responded, Are you stalling for time, waiting for that old Rain Emperor to appear? He tried to sense it, then continued, I'm afraid you'll have to be disappointed. The old Rain Emperor should already be driven mad, let alone coming out of secluded cultivation to fight. Perhaps he cannot even hold out for 3 days. Rubbish! That spiritual pedestal tier roared. Don't think you can sway me with such words. The old emperor has the protection of our nation's fortune and divine skill, and certainly is not something like just a few trifling words from you could distort the truth of. Really? Ling Han smiled faintly. Then, after he once again sensed his origin power transformed into a big hand and grabbed towards a certain location. Pung! Only the heavy noise that rang out was heard, after which was a cacophony of voices. Oh no! Someone has abducted His Imperial Majesty. The arrays have totally collapsed at the first blow. A big hand directly broke the array and entered, then abducted His Imperial Majesty. Where is the old emperor? Get the old emperor, quick! The imperial palace was in a state of utter chaos. The guards, eunuchs, and maids were all in a flurry, releasing tumultuous shouts. Pung! The ceiling above Ling Han's head broke open, and a colossal hand returned, precisely grasping onto a young man attired in imperial robes. Who else could it be but the former 7th prince, Qi Zhangyu, the current Rain Emperor? That spiritual pedestal tier was shocked to the extreme. What kind of ability is this? The person was here and did not move, yet could actually grasp His Imperial Majesty over, and moreover also broke through an array. That was a great array of the flower blossom tier, even for a flower blossom tier elite here in person, he would also need some time to strike against it to break it. So, with such time allowance, it should be enough for the old emperor to rush over to take on the enemy. However, now it had totally collapsed at the first blow. What extent did the strength of this person reach? Ling, Grandmaster Ling? As Qi Zhongyu caught sight of Ling Han, he immediately calmed down, his panic entirely gone. Ling Han put Qi Zhongyu down as he smilingly said, "It really is not easy to see you nowadays." "Haha, Grandmaster Ling, what a joke." Qi Zhongyu laughed heartily. After a few years on the throne, he naturally had also harnessed the magnanimous air an emperor should have. At least this superficial act was very neatly done, seemingly calm and unruffled. However, so long as one were to see his still shaking legs, they would realize that the scare he had had just now was indeed not a light one. Let's not talk about this first. The Rain Emperor's situation is not looking exactly rosy. Ling Han pressed. Qi Zhongyu was alarmed and felt his heart fill with absolute unease given that it had already been quite some time from the moment he was being carried off up till now, and there was actually yet to be any response from the old Rain Emperor. This definitely could be the case. Ling Han's figure flitted and vanished momentarily, but swiftly returned amidst the flash of a lightning bolt. In his hand, he held the withered figure of an old man. The old man was so withered that he was near turning into a dried tree trunk. Although he was very tall, his weight now was not more than 25 kilograms. "Senior Elder." Qi Zhongyu immediately took a step forward. "Old Emperor!" That spiritual pedestal tier also cried out in alarm. Were it not for him seeing the old emperor a good many times, he really would not believe that this was the old emperor. "Fine, this is really too good for you." Ling Han smilingly shook his head and took out ginseng as thick as a child's arm. The ginseng was covered with purple lines, filled with the truth of the great Tao. This was dragon blood tyrant ginsengit. Just so happened that it had ripened, and a massive lot was harvested in just one crop. He did not expect that the first to taste it would actually be the old Rain Emperor. The other's lifespan had been depleted, and he had also usually taken too many spirit herbs to prolong life. Even if one were to give him tons of 1,000-year-old ginseng, it would also be useless. So, the only way to allow him to continue living was to elevate his level to snatch years of life from fate. With support from the power of the nation, the old Rain Emperor, though possessing the strength of a flower blossom tier elite, was not a genuine flower blossom tier being, so his lifespan could be extended to 100 to 150 years at maximum. If he really rose into the flower blossoming tier, then living another 50 years more was absolutely not an issue. A dragon blood tyrant ginseng only exchanged for 50 years of life for a flower blossom tier cultivatorthus matter being made known to others would get him much reprimand for being a wasteful young master, right? But Ling Han was unperturbed. "Spirit herbs are what I have in abundance, so bite me." He immediately fired up the furnace and started concocting. The dragon blood tyrant ginseng was originally a natural spirit herb, so it could actually be consumed directly. But given the low level of the old Rain Emperor, if he were to consume it directly, it'd definitely cause his body to explode, what more helping him to charge into the flower blossom tier. Therefore, Ling Han had to process it first to make the medicinal properties become moderate somewhat for the old Rain Emperor. This kind of low hand, one to be able to consume it. Not even half a day later, Ling Han already completed refining a pill, pressed open the mouth of the old Rain Emperor, and forcefully thrust the pill in. Then, using origin power, he sent the pill all the way into his stomach. The effect practically produced instantaneous results. This was dragon blood tyrant ginseng, though not of the very early generation the ginseng lord that had been bathed in the true dragon's blood, but rather its later generation of who knew how many years. Yet it was still considered as a treasure by the heaven tier elites, as it could actually give them a boost to rise into the shattering void tier. Now it was merely a breakthrough to the flower blossom tier. How simple would it be? The old Rain Emperor immediately opened his eyes, and only spared Ling Han a glance before promptly soaring into the sky. He was about to break through, and would possibly cause great wreckage, so he naturally could not remain at the imperial palace. He relied on power of the nation to advance into the flower blossom tier, bloomed a false divine flower, and was incredibly familiar with the flower blossom tier, so in fact his divine seed had been sown long ago. He was just unable to groom a real divine flower. Now, under the medicinal effects of the dragon blood tyrant ginseng, the divine seed immediately sprouted. It'd grow very quickly and flourish into full bloom. The flower blossom tier. Ha 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 ha. The old Rain Emperor guffawed. His body seemed to have received nurturing at a pace visible to the naked eye. It became sturdy, the muscles swelled, and a luster reappeared on the dull hair atop his head. He then briskly descended in one step, turning towards Ling Han to address him with a cupped hand salute. Many thanks to young friend's help. How could he not be happy? Now he was already a genuine flower blossom tier being, and in addition to the support of power of the nation, his maximum combat strength possibly had reached the peak of the flower blossom tier. Ling Han smiled faintly and remarked, "I reckon the words I am going to say next will make you stab me with a sword." Chapter 748, Ascension. Chapter 748, Ascension. Henny, how could that be possible? The old Rain Emperor quickly waved his hands in denial. He was not one to forget his debts. Previously, he'd looked like he was dead, but that was only because he had been too weak. He'd still been aware of his surroundings. Ling Han did not argue, but rather withdrew the handwritten letter from the Rain Emperor and handed it over to Qi Changyu. Qi Changyu subconsciously received it, and after a moment's blankness, he finally understood that he was to open it and read. The old Rain Emperor neared him, and the old man and young man alike began to read with utmost seriousness. My imperial father broke through to the spiritual infant tier. Haha, I just knew Haichao's talent exceeded all our previous generations. Indeed, he has led the way to the greatest prosperity of our Qi clan. Qi Changyu and the old Rain Emperor were both excited. Spiritual infant tier. That was the most powerful existence in the North region, not merely unifying the whole desolate North, but even in the whole of the North region, that kind of existence would be able to get his own acknowledged place. But as they read on, their expressions immediately darkened. The Rain Emperor actually wanted to pass on his imperial throne to Ling Han. Furthermore, the Rain Emperor actually did not supply a clear explanation for such a huge matter, and merely said that they would naturally understand his decision in future. This was not something as simple as declaring him a king, but related to the imperial throne. The old and young man were both hesitant. The imperial throne was the most important asset of the Qi clan and was also their root. The Qi clan could allow a lapse in their generations of geniuses, for they would be able to produce a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator just by depending on the power of the whole country. And added with the power of the nation, it was definitely not a problem for them to have someone that could somewhat possess the power of the flower blossom tier. This practically guaranteed the many years of the imperial authority in the hands of the Qi clan. But now they were to actually hand over the imperial throne. Wouldn't the Qi clan be heading downhill then? If the Rain Emperor was personally here, then with his forcefulness as well as his current ability as a spiritual infant tier cultivator, even if the old Rain Emperor and Qi Changyu had disagreements, they would not dare to say much. But if there was only a single letter, then the persuasiveness of it was greatly reduced. Ling Han saw this and said calmly, "The Rain Emperor is my sworn big brother. We brothers naturally have reasons for our actions, and you all need only to do as we say. I have not yet gone to the point of taking a mere Rain country seriously. It is only that there is a ready-made army here, and power of the nation has to be plundered with the form of a nation. Otherwise, I would not care about such a tiny place. The first step is to unify the whole of the desolate North, and the second is to conquer the North region. The third step is to unify all 4 regions under one ruler, and then ally with the Purple Moon Empire of the Middle State to help them cut the cake, Ling Han recited smoothly. Cut the cake one. Both the old Rain Emperor and Qi Changyu felt like passing out. What a lofty and grand ambition it was to unify all 4 regions. But the purpose of doing so was actually to combine forces with another party in order to cut a cake. Did you have too much free time? Ling Han could not bother with more pointless talk, and said to Qi Changyu, just prepare to abdicate. This time it is me, a senior, who is bullying you, so there will, of course, be compensation. He waved out a hand casually, and alchemical pills and various secret techniques were spread out all over the table. Before coming here, he had naturally made appropriate preparations. Heaven-grade cultivation technique. Furthermore, it's a complete one with all 9 layers. One would be able to break through to the heaven tier by cultivating accordingly. Heavens, there's even a heaven-grade martial arts technique. This is an earth-grade alchemical pill. The old Rain Emperor and Qi Changyu exclaimed in shock, their faces twitching madly. Some treasures could be considered priceless, but there were some treasures that were even more valuable than a country, such as heaven-grade cultivation and martial arts techniques and earth-grade alchemical pills. But now, these things were laid out in front of them like they were worth nothing. This was more than enough to buy the whole Rain country, and with these resources in the hands of the Qi clan, as long as there appeared a genius after many years in their clan, then once he advanced to the heaven tier, he would be able to conquer 100 or even 10,000 Rain countries again. After the old and young man got over their excitement, they realized that there was no longer any sign of Ling Han. Elder, what do we do? Qi Changyu asked the old Rain Emperor. Since this concerned the imperial throne, the decision naturally had to be made by the strongest elite of their clan. Immediately abdicate, the old Rain Emperor declared resolutely. Wasn't being capable of handing out so many treasures without even a slight frown a clear indication of Ling Han's wealth as well as his terrifying prowess? Without power, how could he possibly hand out so many things? The old Rain Emperor was very ambitious and greedy, but he knew that there were some small advantages that could not be coveted, as it could lead to deadly ruin. However, even if Qi Changyu took these things for himself, Ling Han would not kill them either. After all, they were the senior relative and son of the Rain Emperor. At most, he would draw the 2 of them into the Black Tower to be imprisoned and handed over to the Rain Emperor in the future. He returned to the Ling clan residence, drew everyone into the Black Tower, and returned once more to the Rain country. Zhu Xian, the Li siblings, Yuan Qinghe, and the others appeared one after another. The Rock Spirit and Hellion Sun Shui, especially, were in the deity transformation and heaven tier, respectively, so everyone's aura was incredibly terrifying. The old Rain Emperor felt unbearably anxious, and was exceptionally glad that he had not had any inappropriate ideas. Otherwise, any person here would be able to easily crush him. He hurriedly urged Qi Changyu to abdicate to avoid any delays causing Ling Han to feel displeased and think that they were planning some tricks. This person had spoken the truth. His power was enough to unify the whole North region, so there was no need for him to covet the Rain country and moreover hand out so many treasures as compensation. However, even if Qi Changyu was very cooperative, it was not that simple to abdicate. It had vast implications. After all, what Ling Han wanted was not merely a country by name, but a country in which every citizen was loyal so that there would be power of nation available for his use. He deployed Yuan Qinghe and the others into the army. It was, firstly, to subdue the hearts of the military forces, and secondly, to retrain the troops following the methods of the Purple Moon Empire. He had already taught these methods to Yuan Qinghe, Li Fengyu, and the others on their way here. In truth, there were only a few key factors: discipline, cooperation, and courage. Qi Changyu finally settled the various important ministers, as well as the 8 great clans of the imperial city. Ling Han only had the rock spirit make a short round, and everyone naturally was terrified out of their wits. So who would dare to say another word in disagreement? Half a month later, the abdication ceremony began. Qi Changyu abdicated. Ling Han inherited the throne and changed the official name of the nation to Ling, with the name as the Great Ling Dynasty. Ling Han did not want to waste even the slightest bit of time, and immediately bestowed the title of general to Yuancheng, He, and Li Fengyu. Each of them led a troop and began an expedition to conquer the remaining 8 countries of the desolate north. The key of this war was conquest and not slaughter. As much as possible, they were to avoid damage. With an elite at the peak of the spiritual infant tier and an elite at the peak of the flower blossom tier as commanding officer, how could they not be invincible? In merely a month's time, the 2 great armies had utterly defeated the other 8 nations. Even assembling an allied army was useless, and they could only raise a white flag in surrender. Ling Han could no longer suppress his cultivation level and was forced to break through to the deity transformation tier. His initial plan was to continue suppressing his cultivation for a while longer. After all, the rate of his breaking through was too fast, but he was really incapable of suppressing it any longer and could only choose to break through. Deity transformation tier, that was to transform the spiritual infant inside his body into a deity. Naturally, that was transformation into a deity inside his own body, and this was another leap. To Ling Han, this step was incredibly easy to take. Firstly, he had really accumulated too much energy, and secondly, in his last life, he had already taken this step. As a result, it was natural that everything progressed smoothly. And now, I'm already in the deity transformation tier. Ling Han was very rueful. He had originally thought that, in this lifetime, he would only be able to return to the heaven tier in his 30s. But from the looks of things, he would probably be able to do so in another 1 or 2 years' time. Firstly, the environment for martial arts in this lifetime was really too good, and secondly, it was also because he had obtained the Black Tower that could endlessly provide cultivation resources for his use, and added together with the fact that he himself was the alchemy emperor, it was natural that his cultivation rate was even faster than before. Next, we should launch a military campaign in the North region. Chapter 749, Arriving at the Winter Moon Sect. Chapter 749, Arriving at the Winter Moon Sect. Henyi. Setting out to conquer the North region was not only for the purpose of expanding territory and strengthening the power of the nation. There was another significance to this course of action, and that was to settle the feud with the Winter Moon sect once and for all. Ling Dongxing had already reached the peak of the spiritual pedestal tier, but for making the last step to advance to the flower blossom tier, theoretically he would still need a dozen or even 20 years' time. However, Ling Dongxing could not wait that long, and neither could Ling Han. If it was another person, they could only watch and wait helplessly, but Ling Han was the alchemy emperor. So what if his talent was a bit weak? Consume alchemical pills. There were as many as 100 stalks of dragon blood tyrant ginseng by now, and aside from setting a few aside for sewing, the rest could all be used as medicinal ingredients. How scary was that? Ling Dongxing forcefully raised his cultivation to the flower blossom tier, and added with the fact that Ling Han had already established a nation and taken control of a massive territory. He, Ling Dongxing, was revered as father of the reigning emperor, and was naturally capable of using the power of the nation. With the continuing expansion of the Ling Empire, the power of the nation would only become stronger and stronger. Could such a Ling Dongxing still be incapable of defeating Ao Feng? Before setting out, Ling Han went once more to the old mine area in the Fire Country. Innumerable, powerful elites were buried underground there, and could very possibly become the means to learn underworld cultivation and open the way to the underworld, to this realm that similarly was an incomparably awful matter. Ling Han was currently racing against time. Not only did he have to split open the skies before the 5 sects of the immortal realm made their move, but also had to do it before a bunch of living corpses did. When he arrived, that giant silver spider actually appeared. It moved its giant legs that seemed akin to divine spears and was breathing in the direction of the moon, seeming as if it was absorbing the essence of the moon. The higher his cultivation level, the more terrifying he sensed this giant spider was. An awesome creature on the level of a 15-eyed great corpse king. This giant silver spider should have just happened to venture out to cultivate, and he had just so coincidentally come upon it. Otherwise, with how this giant spider disdained to cast a glance on him, how could it be possible that it would deliberately come out for him? Ling Han estimated his own battle prowess. The higher the cultivation level, the more difficult it was to battle an opponent on a higher cultivation level. That applied to Ling Han as well. After he had advanced into the deity transformation tier, Ling Han's current battle prowess was gauged as 1 star of the heaven tier, but when he'd previously broken through to the spiritual infant tier, his battle prowess could match 9 battle stars of the deity transformation tier. However, he was still the emperor of the great Ling dynasty, and as long as he was still in his own territory, he could draw upon the power of the nation to strengthen his own battle prowess. This could add on another star of battle prowess to him, and this was still the power upgrade he had after he had united the whole desolate north. If he could unify the whole north region as well, then the power upgrade would at least be 5 stars, and with the unifying of all 4 regions, that would be even more awesome. Reaching 10 stars would be more than enough in the condition that Ling Han's body could withstand such terrifying power of the nation. With the installation of power from the Black Tower, his battle prowess naturally spiked to the Shattering Void tier, but the key was how many stars of Shattering Void tier could he reach. After all, the desolate north was too small, although it helped him to add on another battle star of battle prowess onto the foundations of heaven tier. In the case of the Shattering Void tier, this increase could practically be ignored. He was definitely still unable to defeat this giant spider, or so Ling Han thought. Shaking his head, he gave up the idea of wanting to investigate further. After all, it would be too wasteful to use the installation of power from the Black Tower here. He was just planning to turn around and leave when he stopped in his steps. Although the old mine area was eternally enshrouded in black mist and seemed eerie and frightful, this time it looked even worse. That black mist was thicker than before, as if it had turned solid. It was as black as ink, which made it appear even more terrifying. Those people underground were coming out. Ling Han pricked up his ears to listen closely. There seemed to be someone whispering in the surroundings, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not clearly hear what was being said, just as if it was the talk of ghosts. He left. This place was too bizarre and extremely freaky. Without enough power, it would be best if he did not hang out around here. The army moved and set out towards Fallen Moon Forge, starting a full invasion of the North region. Ling Han revealed his status as a heaven-grade alchemist, and everywhere he passed, the Alchemist Society would be the first to surrender. What a joke! He was a heaven-grade alchemist, and to them he was their god. Now that their god wanted them to follow him, how could they refuse? And the Alchemist Society's status was in a league of its own. They possessed vast influence, which led to many cities directly surrendering without a battle. What Ling Han wanted to do, on the contrary, was not to conquer the whole world. It would be too easy for him to conquer the North region. Any general under his command would be an invincible existence in any region. What was most important to cultivators? Power, naturally. With enough power, others naturally could only submit. Furthermore, it was not something unacceptable for them to accept a heaven-grade alchemist as their liege. After a mere 7 days, they had advanced all the way to the front of the mountain gates of the Winter Moon sect. The last time he'd been here, only with the installation of power from the Black Tower could he manage to match an elite of the spiritual infant tier, but now his normal battle prowess had already advanced to the heaven tier, and could practically match his prowess in his last life. If the installation of power from the Black Tower was included, he could even match a shattering void tier elite and destroy this sect with a single finger. "Your Majesty, do we attack immediately?" a young man asked. He was Jin Wuji and had met Ling Han long ago in the Yuan city. At the time, he had even fought Ling Han because of his younger brother. At that time, he had not followed the others to the Winter Moon sect. Instead, he had married a beautiful bride and began to enjoy life. But now, with Ling Han's return, he, too, enlisted into the army to assist Ling Han. He had just broken through into the spiritual ocean tier, so his power was naturally not something that Ling Han cared about. However, what Ling Han needed were people that he could trust enough, and thus Jin Wuji was naturally placed in an important position. But there were even more of his old acquaintances that were in the Winter Moon sect. The first target of attack was the Winter Moon sect, firstly, because it was indeed very near, and secondly because Ling Han wanted to gather these old friends of his under his banner. Ling Han nodded and said, "Small Rock, you take the lead." The rock spirit cried out and began its charge towards the Winter Moon sect. It had now broken through to the deity transformation tier, and added with the special traits it had as a spirit of one of the 5 elements. Its battle prowess could match a cultivator at the peak of the deity transformation tier. A single punch had shattered the mountain protection great array that the Winter Moon sect had. Ling Han invited Ling Dongxing out. The feud between himself and Ao Feng naturally had to be settled by him personally. This was a hatred that Ling Dongxing had nursed for 20 years. With the havoc caused by the rock spirit, the Winter Moon sect could practically be considered having completely surrendered. The law of martial arts was power was might. Since the rock spirit was so awesome, the Winter Moon sect had naturally lost their fighting spirit, and as the army of millions called out in unison that those who surrendered would not be killed, everyone naturally handed over their weapons and obediently surrendered. Ao Feng was dragged over. His spirit base had been crippled by Ling Han, so his cultivation level had stagnated at the early stages of the flower blossom tier. When he saw Ling Han, he could not control his great hatred and roared in rage. If it had not been that the **** pleading at that time, and that I had a moment of soft-heartedness, had I just simply killed you, little bastard, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. How dare you? Yuan Cheng, his fist slammed down on the back of Ao Feng's head, and the impact caused him to immediately drop onto the ground. Ling Han nodded at Yu Kaiyu and his family as a form of address. Now, he did not have the time to deal with these relatives of his. Ling Dongxing stepped out and said, "Ao Feng, fight me. If you can defeat me, then I will spare you." Ao Feng sneered. 20 years ago, you were already a loser. That is the case now, and so will it be in future. Then let's battle. Ling Dongxing's fighting spirit soared as he stepped down with a sword in hand. Chapter 750, Ending the Feud. Chapter 750, Ending the Feud. Henny. Yuan Cheng, he could not help but turn towards Ling Han, his gaze quizzical. Ling Han nodded and indicated for him to do as said. With his current prowess, even if Ling Dongxing really couldn't match Ao Feng, Ling Han would still be able to rescue his father in time. Yuan Cheng, he released the binds on Ao Feng to allow 2 men who had developed an enmity 20 years ago to battle for the last time here. Ling Dongxing summoned the Demon Birth Sword. Yes, Ling Han had given this level 10 spirit tool to his father. Although Ling Dongxing was not able to activate even a single pattern on the sword, a level 10 spirit tool was still a level 10 spirit tool. Merely the sharpness of it was nature-defying. While Ling Dongxing had little talent in martial arts and could merely be considered a somewhat talented person, he was definitely not a genius. He had Ling Han's full guidance, but even so, he could only manage to form a single flash of sword chi. That was enough. A flash of sword chi would enable him to borrow on the might of the Demon Birth Sword, and the destructive power that he could display was unbearably terrifying. After all, The might of sword qi was influenced both by the cultivator and the sword used. How could a level 10 spirit tool be anything but awesome? Ling Dongxing and Ao Feng were embroiled in a fierce battle. A feud that had been buried for 20 years finally exploded. The two men exchanged blows, and sword qi danced and origin power collided. Both released their strongest abilities. In theory, Ao Feng was definitely stronger. He had broken through to the flower blossom tier a few years ahead of Ling Dongxing, and his knowledge of how to use power on the level of the flower blossom tier was far superior to Ling Dongxing's. Moreover, he had formed as many as 9 flashes of sword qi, and was just a single step away from forming 10 flashes, at which point he had hopes of solidifying his sword qi into sword ray. In comparison, Ling Dongxing had merely grasped a single flash of sword qi. However, he possessed a level 10 spirit tool. The sword qi that was unleashed by the Devil Birth Sword was incredibly severe and completely crushed Ao Feng's sword qi. Upon contact, Ao Feng's sword qi was shattered. It completely was not qualified to match it. Pung, pung, pung. The more Ling Dongxing fought, the stronger he became. He had consumed an unknown number of spiritual herbs, but did not manage to make use of all their effects. A lot of their essence was accumulated in his body, and with this battle, all this essence instantly circulated and was endlessly absorbed by him. This was akin to his energy being continuously replenished. On the other hand, Ao Feng's spirit base had been shattered, and he could not possibly absorb spiritual qi with his spirit base anymore to convert into his own origin power. He could only depend on continuously taking alchemical pills. However, alchemical pills would induce the development of immunity. The first pill would produce full effects, the second would only have 90% effect, then slowly declining to 80, 70, 60%, and further. In this way, the longer the battle went on, the weaker he naturally became. So how would he be able to match Ling Dongxing? After 2 hours of battle, Ao Feng had signs of loss of endurance. However, he, too, knew that whether it was Ling Dongxing or Ling Han, neither could possibly spare him. In the end, he gritted his teeth in bitterness and did not open his mouth to plead for mercy. Every strike he delivered was deadly, as he intended to destroy both himself and Ling Dongxing, even if it cost him his life, so that he could drag the latter down with him. Unfortunately, if it had been 5 years ago, Ling Dongxing would naturally die with him without a doubt, but now he had his wife, his son, and a grandson too. So how could he be willing to die with this great foe of his? He merely strengthened his defenses and waited until Ao Feng had expended all his energy. By then, his only fate would naturally be death. On the path to the netherworld, I'll wait for you both, Ao Feng finally declared with a harsh voice and expression as he ran out of strength. His gaze was so venomous that he looked like he wanted to devour them. Pooh! His chest was pierced through by a single strike from Ling Dongxing. The demon birth sword pierced his chest, and all signs of life were immediately completely destroyed. With a vital point struck directly by a level 10 spirit tool, even a heaven tier cultivator could not possibly survive. What more when Ao Feng was merely in the flower blossom tier? Ling Dongxing could not help but feel extremely rueful. He had initially thought that he could not possibly get his revenge in this lifetime, because he knew that Ao Feng's talent in martial arts was indeed above his own. Moreover, the latter had a colossal existence like the winter moon sect backing him up, so the gap between the two would only become larger and larger. But who asked him to have a good son? Ling Han did not start a massacre. He had spared all of Ao Feng's children. He was not one who enjoyed mindless bloodshed. In truth, as long as someone did not touch his bottom line, he had always been one to opt for peaceful discussion before violence. At the same time, he was a lazy person. When he discovered that Hellion Sun Shui had exceptional leadership talents, he had her take charge of all national matters. She was, after all, a member of a royal clan in the Northern Sea. And how big was the Northern Sea? She had confidence to manage even the enormous northern sea. What more when the current territory was only so small? Hellion Sun Shui accepted the task gladly. In her eyes, this throne would naturally belong to her own son in future. So what would be wrong with helping out her son? However, in front of outsiders, she changed her appearance with the use of the disguise pill to avoid being found out by the sea race. As for the territorial expansion, with Yuan Cheng He and Li Fengyu as great generals and the Rock Spirit as support, there was no place that could not be subdued at least not in the North Region, so he was naturally at ease. There were others to handle both internal and external matters. So what else did he have to worry about? If he had to do everything himself, then what was the use of so many followers? He very happily became a man who told others to work but did nothing himself. He only had one request, and that was to pacify the hearts of the people and prioritize stability. That was because the purpose of the expedition was not to expand his borders, but obtain the power of the nation. Only when the hearts of the people were loyal would power of the nation be strong. Under Ling Han's command, the great Ling nation began a wide recruitment of troops and laid out extremely attractive conditions. Another aspect was to improve the lives of the people so as to allow every citizen to have the opportunity to cultivate and, at minimum, be able to reach the 4th or 5th layer of the body refining tier to keep them fit, so as to raise the living standards of the whole nation. Due to Zhu Xian Er's strong suggestion, Ling Han decided to take a trip to the Half Moon sect. If they could recruit the Half Moon sect, they would be able to avoid bloodshed, which would also make Zhu Xian Er feel better. After all, this was her sect. Ling Han and Zhu Xian Er naturally could not be absent. Hellion Sun Shui, meanwhile, remained behind to handle national matters. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan continued to accompany Ling Han's parents, and only Hunyo, Rabbit, and the gold-seeking rat followed. Ling Jian Shui had not been weaned off his milk yet, so he naturally could only stick with Hellion Sun Shui. But Ling Han had purposely subdued a few white jade cows that were still nursing, so as to avoid his son not having enough milk. The milk produced by this type of demonic beast was the most nutritious. This naturally made Hellion Sun Shui very displeased. Her breasts were just a little small, but she really had abundant milk, all right. Ling Han and the others set out and advanced towards the Half Moon sect. 7 days later, they arrived at their destination, and with Zhu Xianer to inform the sect of their arrival, they soon received summons. Next, Ling Han revealed a bit of his prowess, which naturally intimidated the Half Moon sect. Added with the fact that Zhu Xianer would become Ling Han's beloved consort in future, which meant that after the Half Moon sect surrendered their allegiance, their status would not decline. The higher-ups of the sect made a most wise decision. Resistance would be undoubtedly fatal, so was there need to still consider which choice to make. This could be considered a conclusion that everyone was satisfied with. Ling Han did not immediately return, but instead set out towards the agriculture enclosed mountain. This was where Zhu Xian Er's master experienced a Dao injury. Ling Han had been very interested when he heard about it. However, at that time his power was inadequate, so he had set the idea aside. Now his battle prowess could match the heaven tier, so he was naturally full of confidence. Another 7 days later, they arrived at their destination. This was the westernmost area of the North region. If they traveled a bit further, they would reach the region barrier separating the North region and the West region. Agriculture, enclosed mountain, Eaglewood Valley. This was a forbidden land. Chapter 751, Eaglewood Valley. Chapter 751, Eaglewood Valley. Henyi. There were a few dangerous places in the North region called life-restricted areas, which were incredibly dangerous. Even if such extremely powerful elite cultivators like spiritual infant tier cultivators entered them, they would be in danger of dying, just like in the dark devil forest. Demonic chi bubbled furiously in the core area, and it was possible for anyone to be affected and become a zombie that lost all sense of will. The Eaglewood Valley was one such life-restricted area, but was not as well known as the Dark Devil Forest, because this valley was filled completely with rocks, and no one had ever heard of spiritual herbs growing here, which naturally meant that it had no attraction to cultivators at all. Cultivators were naturally willing to risk their lives only because there was something they could get out of it. Wasn't risking their lives without any kind of benefits something only an idiot would do. Ling Han's group stopped outside this valley. From the outside, they could vaguely see random rocks protruding skywards inside the valley, just as if it was covered with spikes. Thick and dense purple fog soared endlessly, forming different scenes which produced the effect of visual obstruction. Even when Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, he was not able to see too far inside. The Dark Devil Forest had chaos source rocks. Then what does this place have? Ling Han mumbled, and turning to Zhu Xian'er, he asked, "Why did your master come here?" Zhu Xian'er pondered for a moment and replied, "Master loves to travel the world and investigate all kinds of dangerous areas." She said that the formation of every danger zone was not something simple, and there could possibly be extraordinary treasures hidden within. Ling Han could not help but laugh. "I've never thought that your master is actually a money grubber." Zhu Xian'er rolled her eyes at him in annoyance, but the gesture was still very beautiful and caused Ling Han's heart to throb madly. She continued, "Master said that the fog here could take various forms, and there are some that fit some kind of natural Tao, so there's possibly some universally shocking secret treasure hidden within." Ling Han shook his head and said, "So your master ventured in, and the result was she suffered a calamity." "More or less." Zhu Xian'er sighed softly. To heal her master's Tao injury, she had really been driven haggard by how busy she had been the last few years. Because she had lost her master's protection, there was a considerable number of people in the sect that revealed their desires to take possession of her by force, and she was almost driven to a breakdown by dealing with them. "Then I would really have to take a look." Ling Han pulled out Gold-Seeking Rat and said, "Fatty, go in and see if there's anything valuable." The Gold-Seeking Rat hurriedly scrambled back up to his shoulder and squeaked madly. It was trying to signal that this place, just from the looks of it, looked incredibly dangerous, and it was almost scared to death. So what else was it supposed to see? Ling Han shook his head and said, "Hey, when it's time for food, you're always afraid to be the last and fight to get the first bite. But when I need you to do something, you have all kinds of excuses. I've really raised you for nothing." The Gold-Seeking Rat rolled its eyes. It was a gold-seeking rat, not a treasure-seeking rat, and was definitely no battle rat. There was no way it was going to a dangerous place like that. "Then we can only go." Ling Han drew Zhu Xian'er into the Black Tower. At the time, her master had similarly been in the spiritual infant tier, yet still suffered a Tao injury, so she obviously would not be able to withstand it, either. The group of 3 Ling Han, Hunyo, and Rabbit walked together into the valley. None of them dared to be careless, and they prepared to duck into the Black Tower at any moment. There's a kind of implicit charm that makes Lord Rabbit feel light and airy, as if I were about to fly here," Rabbit suddenly exclaimed. Ling Han sensed for a while, although this purple fog did not contain spiritual qi, there really seemed to be some kind of substance that the world outside did not possess in it. He could not identify what it was, but merely felt that this thing seemed to possess a high level. Just like level 10 precious metal completely dominated over level 1 material, it possessed a natural advantage. It's no wonder that Xian'er's master would come here. Ling Han nodded. There was no cultivation technique above 7th tier in the North region. Thus, if Zhu Xian'er's master wanted to break through to the deity transformation tier, she could only think of some other way. The purple fog affected visibility and blocked divine sense, causing the group of 3 to be only capable of seeing about 6 meters ahead. Their divine senses range was also the same. If they met with any kind of ambush at this time, they would definitely be caught unawares. They had just been thinking about ambush, and they really did meet with an ambush as a pile of purple fog took the form of a leopard that rapidly pounced towards them. It was astonishingly fast, and was definitely not inferior to the Heaven Tier. Ling Han gave a humph and formed his hands into seals, clapping down in the direction of the purple leopard. Earth overturning seal. Both his hands were covered with patterns that exuded golden light, just like the light of the universe, and actually managed to disperse a bit of the purple fog. Although he had restored the earth overturning seal's single-handed version, he had not drawn his sword now, so naturally it was stronger to use it with 2 hands. The purple leopard was unafraid, opening its large mouth to bite him. It was obviously formed by fog, yet they seemed to be able to see its eerie white fangs and blood-red tongue, which made it look very twisted. Pum! The earth overturning seal clapped down on the purple leopard's body. Golden light shot out in all directions, and it instantly exploded from the impact, turning back into purple fog that vanished in the valley. Although the opponent could not even last a single strike, Ling Han's expression was a little serious as he said, "It had the battle prowess of a single star of the deity transformation tier. Furthermore, it seems capable of using a sliver of power of regulation." He raised his hand, and they could see there was actually a wound on his palm, though it was very shallow. Its battle prowess of merely a single star of the deity transformation tier was actually capable of tearing his physical defenses. Even if it was just a bit, it was shocking enough. His current physique was something that could match level 9 precious metal in toughness. Even if an ordinary Heaven Tier cultivator threw furious blows in his direction, it would be very difficult to injure him unless a considerable number of Heaven Tier cultivators joined forces and refined him like they would level 9 precious metal only. Then would it be possible that he would be refined successfully? Yet now he was actually injured by a demonic beast formed out of fog. This was really hard to believe. No wonder Xian Er's master suffered a Dao injury. This place is really not simple, and is not inferior to the Dark Devil Forest in any way. Ling Han said seriously, "Then we had better retreat. There's meat to eat outside and carrots to chew, so why must we come here to seek our own discomfort?" Although Rabbit felt a strong curiosity as well, it obviously had a greater fear of death. Ling Han laughed and said, "We don't have to do that yet. I have teleportation talismans, and even if we were trapped, we could still escape. Our schemes are grand, and these mystery realms and danger zones could all possibly be unstable factors, so we have to check them one by one. At the very least, we have to know what dangers lie within. For example, the old mine area in the Fire Country. There was no less than about 100 living dead of the Shattering Void tier in there, and in the event they came out, they would have a tremendous influence on their attempt to split open the skies. Since the Purple Moon Empire could snatch away time liquid to pass a few millennia, while the living dead in the old mine area died to live and dug their own graves to become entities of the netherworld, could there be even more such cases in this realm? They continued onward. The purple fog deepened and transformed into demonic beasts multiple times to attack them. Moreover, it was an ambush every time. In this space where visibility was poor and divine sense was blocked, this was really a headache. Thankfully, the demonic beasts formed by this purple fog all had deity transformation tier battle prowess, and were easily destroyed by Ling Han. However, they still left behind many injuries on Ling Han's hands. With a sliver of power of regulation like theirs, even Body of Diamond would find it very difficult to recover. He would have to enter into the Black Tower and drive out that strange energy using the power of the Black Tower first. Not much later, a river appeared ahead of them, but the substance rushing in the river channel was not water, but lightning. It was a burning white river of lightning. Chapter 752, Lightning River. Chapter 752, Lightning River. Henyi, Henyi, River of Lightning. What was the source of this river? A lightning pool. Ling Han's expression changed as he looked at the splashing waves. The level of lightning was so high that with a single glance, he felt a sense of danger in the depth of his soul. He indeed learned the body of lightning, and bathing in lighting, he would only be nourished and not harmed. But this had a premise. The lightning had to be pure and without martial intent, or else it would conflict with his own martial intent, leading to a great backlash. Otherwise, two martial artists that both cultivated fire or water arts wouldn't need to fight, for fighting would just be a waste of time and strength. Hunyo, however, was very excited, charging towards the river while shouting, "Bath time, bath time!" Ling Han pulled her back in a rush and said, "Don't act recklessly. This lightning isn't so simple." This definitely wasn't pure lightning. Ling Han could see the indistinct flickers of vein-like patterns, and they weren't even lightning, but fire vein-like patterns. How could that be? In a lightning river, flames actually appeared. "Look along the river," Ling Han said. His gaze turned towards the upper reaches of the lightning river, and although the purple mist above the river faded a good deal, allowing for more visibility, it was still limited purple mist still pervaded the area. What was at the end of the lightning river? Was it a mystical lightning treasure? The rabbit rolled its eyes all of a sudden, holding its stomach and crying out, "Io, my stomach hurts. I ate too many carrots. Uncle Rabbit's going to retreat first." Ling Han snickered and said, "Rabbit, now you're afraid of death? Sure, go if you want. You don't need to pilfer the carrots inside the Black Tower in the future. Brat, you're too ungenerous." The rabbit put on airs of a strong righteousness. "Is Uncle Rabbit one to be afraid of death? Uncle Rabbit's just afraid that the three of us will fall into enemy hands here, and then no one can save us. So Uncle Rabbit plans on guarding outside in case you guys are trapped, so that Uncle Rabbit can get people for a rescue." "Tisk, TSK, TSK, your shamelessness, I really must learn. I may use it in the future." Ling Han made fun of it. Hunyo, on the other hand, took a bite at the rabbit. It was so painful that the rabbit screamed with pain and obediently went along with them. "Since Uncle Rabbit has to work, hurry up and take out the dragon blood tyrant ginseng so that Uncle Rabbit can at least be a satisfied ghost." The rabbit extended its claws. "Get lost!" Ling Han waved his hand. "Already gave you the 2 I owed you. Still trying to take advantage of me here? No way. One lifetime as brothers. Who are we?" The rabbit started to try to cotton up. They exchanged insults, but they didn't dare to be careless, at all joking was only to relax the tense atmosphere. After all, it really was very strange here. Hunyo was the only one who was truly relaxed. Humming while walking, she was absolutely simple-minded. The closer they got to the upper reaches of the river, the more astonishing the power of lightning was. Although the stream wasn't very turbulent, the waves that splattered in it were extremely shocking, definitely comparable to an attack of a shattering void tier elite that cultivated lightning mystic arts and almost seemed to shake and crack even the skies. They didn't dare to get too close. Although the waves didn't actively hurt people, their might was plain to see. So who dared to underestimate them? The rabbit couldn't bear it, and vehemently requested to enter the Black Tower. Ling Han pondered for a moment, eventually storing both the rabbit and the gold-seeking rat into the Black Tower, and only he and Hunyo were still on the outside. Hunyo was indeed a freak even Ling Han's skin cracked in such atmosphere, but the little girl was not affected at all. Ling Han's current physique reached the level of 9th-tier rare metal, which could even bear the surging presence of the shattering void tier. It was obvious how freakish Hunyo was. This also showed just how powerful shattering void tier elites were. It wasn't like Ling Han hadn't seen shattering void tier beings, but at a close distance they actively retracted their own presence, and during battle he was far away and had no particular awareness all along. But now he knew. Heaven tier elites in front of shattering void tier ones were actually so fragile. No wonder it took several hundred heaven tier elites to kill a shattering void tier 1, while deity transformation tier warriors didn't even qualify to appear in front of shattering void tier elites, being turned into pieces right away. Shattering void, this was an inherent improvement. Ling Han exclaimed inwardly, while fully operating origin power to form a defense around him. What a pity, he cried out inwardly. If he still had the thunder battle armor, it might have great uses here. Hunyo suddenly pointed ahead and said, Ling Han, look, there's a flower. Ling Han focused his gaze, but couldn't see anything. However, he knew that Hunyo wouldn't lie to him, so he walked forward for another stretch. As expected, a strange plant was by the river, roughly half the height of a man, fully dark blue. Its leaves were like arrows, sparse only 7, and at the top blossomed a flower, which was shockingly formed by lightning, which changed continuously as if playing out the process from blossoming to wilting in an instant, repeating continuously. Even with Ling Han being the alchemy emperor in the previous life, knowing many medicinal ingredients well, he completely had no knowledge of this plant. Pretty, pretty! Hunyo let go of Ling Han's hand and dashed towards the flower. Ling Han originally wanted to stop her, but thought of how Hunyo had an instinctive sense of danger and walked here completely fine, so she might actually be unafraid of the lightning river. As expected, when Hunyo rushed to the side of the lightning river, the terrifying power of lightning didn't affect her at all. Smiling, she plucked the flower and skipped back and said, Ling Han, help Nyo stick it on the head. Hunyo took the flower, but was surprised to find that the flower contained the pure power of lightning. In other words, it could be refined and absorbed. The world really was miraculous, although the lightning river surged on ceaselessly and contained terrifyingly great danger. A shred of its power was forcibly extracted and grew into a flower of lightning. Cleansed by heaven and earth, it became extremely pure. Those who cultivated lightning arts could refine it, which had great benefits. This flower of lightning is remarkable and can improve the level of the body of lightning. You should refine it. Ling Han said with a smile. Hunyo shook her head and said, Nyo feels that it'd be useless even if eaten. Ling Han, do you want it? Then Nyo will gift it to you. The little girl immediately jumped on Ling Han's back, trying to force this flower into Ling Han's mouth. Apparently, Hunyo's good intentions couldn't be refused, or else this little girl would talk about it all day. Ling Han could only consume the flower and activate the thunderclap, 9th heaven, quickly dissolving the essence within. After half an hour, Ling Han stood up, and as his eyes opened, there were dazzling flickers of lightning. A flower of lightning obviously couldn't make his lightning body advance from novice to expert, but if there were several hundred such flowers, he definitely could attain the highest level in a single step. Were there any more flowers of lightning by the riverside? Chapter 753, Losing All 5 Senses. Chapter 753, Losing All 5 Senses. Henyi, Henyi. The thunderclap, 9th heaven, wasn't easy to cultivate. At the time, in order for Ling Han to achieve initial success with Body of Lightning, he was struck by lightning for several days. To improve the Body of Lightning, he'd have to be struck continuously by thunderbolts to absorb the essence within the lightning, gradually improving. This was a very slow process. From Ling Han's initial success till now, the steps he'd made were pathetically small, but it couldn't be helped. The lightning might look extremely frightening, but for a body of lightning, the essence of lightning contained within was extremely little. Being able to reach great mastery within 50 years, Ling Han already thought that it'd be extremely fast. It indeed was fast. The great mastery of lightning body could correspond with the shattering void tier, and how many shattering void tier elites could achieve this level in 50 years? In the past, that was something completely unrealistic, and 50 years might not even be enough to reach the deity transformation tier. Only now, when martial arts flourished and prospered, accelerating the growth of elites, was it really possible to reach the shattering void tier in 50 years. However, the benefits brought by Flower of Lightning surpassed that of the total of the thunderbolts brought. How shocking was this? Hunyo, You're definitely a blessing to me." Ling Han said spontaneously. Hu Niu was happy and said proudly, "Niu's Ling Han's blessing." The two continued to advance, but what disappointed Ling Han was that they didn't encounter a flower of lightning for a long time. Only after walking for some more time did they finally see the second flower of lightning. Hu Niu picked the remarkable flower once again. Ling Han wasn't in a rush to refine it and stored it into the Black Tower. He was now more interested in this mountain valley itself. What produced this river of lightning? Walking for a while more, long, they heard the crash of the tide, but it wasn't emitted by the lightning river. Ling Han was shocked. He turned his gaze to the other side and saw another river appear. But what surged in this river also wasn't real water nor lightning, but flames. It was difficult to imagine flames surging like a river and emitting loud sounds as it crashed. If this was lava, it would be easy to understand, but against reason it wasn't. It was pure flames with vein-like patterns flickering within. What was surprising was that Ling Han also discovered lightning element vein-like patterns within it. Earlier, there were also fire vein-like patterns within the lightning river. Could it be? Ling Han had a guess in his mind. The lightning river and fire river converged, so that was why they affected each other. They continued to advance, and in a short while, as expected, the two rivers converged, but to Ling Han's surprise, the two rivers merged instead of crossing each other. With only one river left, the river surged with lightning and flames, which were clearly separate, not interfering with each other, one white and one red appearing ever so dazzling. Ling Han came to a realization. No wonder the two rivers influenced each other, for they were of common origin. And although they split up afterwards, it was inevitable that they affected each other. He was even more curious as to what was at the end of the river, and why it could produce such a miraculous sight. However, it became harder to follow the stream, because the lightning and flames intertwined and produced even more terrifying power even if it didn't attack on its own. The lightning kept shocking and shattering the nearby space, while the flames turned the mountain valley into a true furnace, burning everything. Niu doesn't like it here. Even Hu Niu began to complain. She didn't fear the lightning, but obviously wasn't immune to the flames as small beads of sweat appeared on her face. Ling Han was speechless that Hu Niu only had some beads of sweat. He was already sweating a river. "Let's look a bit farther. If it's too much, we'll leave," Ling Han said. Although he was extremely curious, he wouldn't risk his life here. After all, his cultivation was still low, and he could very well wait till reaching the heaven or shattering void tier to come again. Just when they planned on giving up, the river of lightning and fire came to an end. They arrived at the bottom of the valley, and in front of them was a mountain wall, which the river of lightning and fire poured down from. There was a pitch-dark hole in the mountain wall, but where it led to was unknown. Here, the power of lightning and fire had unexpectedly fallen to a low point, and although it was still fierce, it was at least tolerable. Ling Han looked at that cave, feeling a shred of hesitation. The cave could hold the secret of the mountain valley, but it could also contain endless dangers. Should they continue onwards? He only hesitated a little, and then decided to advance bravely. He still had an instant teleportation talisman and the Black Tower, and even the power boost could temporarily grant him the shattering, void-tier battle prowess. What existence in the vast lands could still kill him instantly? "Go!" He held on Hu Niu's hand and walked into the cave. If anything went wrong, he would immediately put Hu Niu into the Black Tower. The black hole was dark, very dark to the point where Ling Han couldn't see anything, even when he opened the Eye of Truth. He raised his hand and turned origin power into flames, but while he clearly felt the rising of the flames, he didn't see the glow of fire. It was like he was blind. However, when he turned and looked out the cave, he could clearly see the surging river of lightning and fire. Ling Han was shocked. What was going on with this cave? Earlier, in the purple mist, only his sight and divine sense were affected, but could at least be of use. But now, it was like he was truly blind, not only unable to see with his eyes, for even his divine sense couldn't sense anything. If he wasn't still holding on Hunyo's hand, he definitely wouldn't sense that there was another person beside him. Yes, he'd also lost his hearing. Strange, too strange. He was greatly alarmed within, but Ling Han still took another step and continued forward. The more that things were so, the more curious he became to know why. Small Tower, do you know what this place is? He communicated with Black Tower with his divine sense. There's a shred of source power. Small Tower seemed a little serious. If you find it and let me devour it, I can repair by 0.000000001%. *T. Ling Han really wanted to curse. This place was so terrifying, with the surging river of lightning and fire, emitting the radiance of the shattering void tear. Thinking about it, one would know that its origin was remarkable. However, it could only repair Black Tower by 0.0000001%. Then would he in this life be able to see Black Tower reappear in its divine light? Be careful, Small Tower reminded. If there was life here, then it would be too easy to kill you. No kidding. Ling Han couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it, and simply continued forward. It was a stretch of pure darkness. He couldn't see, hear, smell, and even his touch was also disappearing. He clearly grabbed onto Hunyo's hand, but he discovered the sensation was getting weaker and weaker, as if he turned into a walking corpse. He felt pins and needles. What exactly was this damn place? It was too strange. Not knowing how long it had been, Ling Han finally couldn't feel anything. He didn't even know if he was still walking in this cave. Losing the 5 senses, what difference did he have with a living dead? He told himself to search, but didn't know where to go at all or even whether he'd touched a wall, because without touch he wouldn't even know if he'd bumped into the mountain wall and was constantly wasting strength, walking in one place while pushing against it. Compelled by circumstances, he entered the Black Tower. Chapter 754, A Talking Stone Statue. Chapter 754, A Talking Stone Statue. Henny. Ling Han didn't enter the Black Tower alone. Hunyo did as well. He was relieved that he wasn't separated from Hunyo, or else searching for a little girl in that environment would be harder than climbing the skies. Now his 5 senses returned to normal. It was like he had the pleasure of a new lease of life. Zhu Xian'er just happened to come, and Ling Han rushed up and embraced her, kissing her passionately on her charming cherry lips and smelling her faint body scent. He felt the faint heat of Zhu Xian'er's body and that ample touch, which all made him feel a sense of reality. Zhu Xian'er didn't think that he'd be so passionate, and couldn't help but be taken aback, then blushed other people were still watching. However, her body soon became limp and heated from Ling Han's kiss, letting out a faint moan from her small mouth, and she spread her arms out and embraced Ling Han like a snake, kissing back intensely. She awoke to passion. Ling Han let go reluctantly of the beauty in his arms, and was embarrassed to find that his right hand had climbed onto her chest as they were kissing. One really wouldn't know what was good until one could make a comparison. This girl's size completely crushed Helian Chuanchuez, and it was somewhat difficult to grasp it with one hand. It was very elastic, and if he could hold it without gaps, it would probably slide out of his hand. TSK. Ayaya, Nyo's mad. Hunyo was driven mad and stared fiercely at Zhu Xian'er, looking like she wanted to kill her. Ling Han laughed loudly, walked over to pat Hunyo on the head, and said, "Be good." Hunyo still pouted, her killing intent still not waning. Ling Han got out a pig trotter and handed it over. The little girl didn't take it out of spite at first, but couldn't resist her chowhound nature, and soon took and munched on it. Her small face immediately blossomed like a flower. Coax with foot it would always be a success. "Brother Han." Zhu Xian air was delicate and beautiful like the spring water. She had just come back to her senses from that long kiss, her eyes still lost, so remarkably charming. Adulterer asterisk 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 asterisk. Adulterer asterisk 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 asterisk. The rabbit muttered on the side. Ling Han spoke briefly about the encounters inside the cave. Zhu Xian air only felt terrified, but the rabbit said, "Sealing the 5 senses, it's definitely a mighty person. If you're against such a being, then you wouldn't even know how you died. Indeed, deprived of all 5 senses, how would you know where the attack came from? Where should your attacks be aimed? But Niu can see." Hu Niu nibbled on the pig trotter grease all over her small mouth and waved her small hand as she spoke, splashing it all over Ling Han's body. "You could see." Ling Han was astounded. "Yes." Hu Niu nodded emphatically. Although this was very inconceivable, Hu Niu was too freakish. So why couldn't she do it? Then, Niu can lead the way later. Ling Han patted the little girl on the head. Hu Niu waved the pig trotter and said, "Okay." The two exited the Black Tower, and Hu Niu took Ling Han's hand and led, while Ling Han completely relaxed himself. Although he couldn't feel Hu Niu's hand, he believed Hu Niu and let her lead. In reality, he completely couldn't feel himself moving time and space, lost all meaning in, didn't know how much time had passed. He suddenly discovered that faint light appeared in front of him. He was taken aback at first, and then came to realize that he could see. The 5 senses returned, and Ling Han sighed in relief. The entrance wasn't ahead, and Hu Niu didn't lead him randomly. It was a stone house with milky white light, faint but gentle. Ling Han walked inside and looked around. This stone house was very simple. Strictly speaking, it was just a rock cave. Why call it a stone house? It was because a stone statue was erected in the middle. It definitely wasn't formed naturally. The figure was extremely realistic, and every detail could be seen clearly. It had the look of an old man, and even if it was but a stone statue, its celestial-like charm could still be seen. So simple. Ling Han couldn't help but reveal a disappointed look. At the end of the source of 2 strange rivers and a cave that could make people lose their 5 senses was such a simple stone house. Even the stone house was formed naturally, without a trace of human efforts, except for the stone statue. Strange, very strange who would place a stone statue in such a place. What? Disappointed to see this lord. A voice suddenly sounded inside Ling Han's consciousness. Ling Han was suddenly startled, all his hair on ends, and felt pins and needles. What the hell was it? He clearly didn't see anyone. Hey, Junior, where are you looking? This voice sounded again. Show yourself. Ling Han said sternly as his right hand grabbed onto Hu Niu, ready to retreat into the Black Tower at any moment. Isn't this lord right in front of you? TSK, TSK, TSK. A living person has a pair of eyes for nothing. Should this lord pluck them? The voice said. In front. Ling Han couldn't help but look at the stone statue and pointed at it with his finger. This is you. This lord doesn't like to be pointed at. Believe it or not, this lord will break your hands off. The voice spoke again. Ling Han retracted his hand in shock. He'd seen many strange things, and stones possessing life wasn't surprising, just like the rock spirit. However, this one was clearly without any bit of vitality. It was definitely not a rock spirit. Ling Han could tell that it was just a normal stone statue, yet for some reason it could emit divine sense. After knowing what was going on, Ling Han was instead reassured and said smilingly, "Senior, why not come out and let me see?" If this lord could come out, would this lord still chit-chat with you? The voice said, somewhat angry. Could Senior be trapped here? Ling Han turned apprehensive within. He remembered Azura Demon Emperor, who was split into 9 parts, sealed in different areas across the vast lands. This had better not be a part. However, it didn't seem right. Although this place was also rising with mist, the mist was purple, and the lightning and fire did not match Azura Demon Emperor. Junior, since you're able to come here, we're somewhat brought together by fate. How about this? Give this lord a few treasures, and this lord will bestow upon you an exceptional mystical power. So, the voice enticed. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly and said, Senior's conning method is rather profound. To say just a few words and have me work for you? Damn brat! Countless people fight with each other to lick this Lord Saul's, and this lord can't even be bothered to take a glance. Using an exceptional mystical power to exchange with you now, you're still not content? The voice snorted, and Z, one of the stone statue's hands flickered with lightning. How terrifying the lightning's power at least reached high-level heaven tier, definitely surpassing Ling Han's current limit. Ling Han's heart thumped. He could conclude that of the two strange rivers outside, at least the lightning river was inextricably connected to the mysterious being. Chapter 755, Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Chapter 755, Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Henny. Ling Han's thoughts raced as he said, Might I ask what senior is called? Z. The stone statue's lighting flickered and shot towards Ling Han. Junior, I'll teach you a lesson first to let you know that you should respect your seniors, the voice said. Ling Han greeted it with a punch and activated the thunderclap ninth heaven, fighting lightning with lightning. Z, the lightning burst, its dazzling light interweaving. Pa! Ling Han was sent flying and hit the wall hard and then bounced back. This was surprising, as the impact was of the heaven tier, but there was no trace on the wall which showed its firmness. The voice uttered in surprise. Junior, you're quite strange. You're obviously just in the deity transformation tier, but your battle prowess reached the heaven tier, and your physique also reached this level. TSK, this is very rare. Even in, it's also very rare. Very rare. Ling Han was shocked. Very rare meant that someone else could also reach such heights. Who was this mysterious being? At least the Earth Dragon sect specialized in physical arts, and Jiaming was a genius that was hard to come by in 10 millennia, claiming to have the highest ancestral blood, but his physique was only comparable to same tier rare metal, which was far from rivaling Ling Han's. And this little girl. The voice paused slightly. To be able to withstand the aftershock of the battle as if nothing had happened is absolutely inconceivable. Strange, a mayfly realm can actually produce such geniuses? Senior, what's the meaning of a mayfly realm? Ling Han asked. Obviously, it's your extremely tiny world, the voice said. This lord is Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. Remember, this lord's feared name. It's the strongest in the world. Ling Han scoffed inwardly. Weren't you maimed, then escaped here, suppressed by someone? Or else? Why would he need to search for some treasure? The world's strongest? Keep boasting. However, his expression was unchanged as he said, So it's Senior Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire. May I ask why our place is a mayfly realm? Without even real stars, suns, and moons, what is it if not a mayfly realm? Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire sneered. All right, less superfluous talk. Hurry up and find the treasure for this lord. As for this little girl, leave her. This lord will take her as a disciple. Pa, Nyo doesn't want to. Nyo made a face. This lord is really strong. No, this lord is the strongest, so acknowledge this lord as master. There are great benefits. It was like Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was fooling a child. Thunder and fire. Ling Han clearly understood. The lightning river and fire river outside were produced by Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire, and judging from this point, Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was indeed very strong, at least able to rival the shattering void tier. Moreover, judging from his tone, he was obviously not a person of the vast lands. An almighty being in the divine realm? No wonder he talked so big. Trapped here, relying on a broken stone statue to talk. How strong can you be? Hunyo said disdainfully, Wayaya. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was greatly infuriated, his furious divine sense interweaving and lasting for a long time. After a long while, he finally said, This lord will recover previous strength someday, and when the time comes, this lord will kill all elites of the highest heavens, and all will prostrate in worship at the feet this lord. Ling Han interrupted. Senior can perhaps tell us about the divine realm. Divine realm? Ha ha ha. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire laughed loudly and sneered. Why should this lord tell you? Youngster, bring these treasures here, and this lord will tell you everything you want to know. To ask for some treasures in exchange for a few questions, Senior really doesn't know how to do business. Not doing it. Ling Han refused at once, paused shortly, and said, However, I might as well listen. What treasures does Senior need? Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was irritated. A mere deity transformation tier, Junior, dared to bargain with him? But, unfortunately, he was the one who needed a favor, was he not? He snorted and said, This lord needs these 4 things. True Dragon's Horn, Heavenly Phoenix Feather, Crimson Spirit Blood, Purple Valley Divine Metal. Pah! The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched. Why don't you steal them? Which of those 4 things weren't the world's finest divine items? The key was that would the vast lands even have these divine items? Take True Dragon's Horn, for example, although Hellion Xuanxue was a descendant of true dragons. She only had a shred of their bloodline and was infinitely far from true dragons. Even the master of the 4 seas, the royal Ao family, only had somewhat richer bloodline, which was still infinitely far away from a true dragon's. The 3 other things were all no inferior. Not to mention that Ling Han was just a small deity transformation tier warrior. Even shattering void tier elites had no way to obtain them. So, first, he couldn't win, and second, he couldn't find it. This lord's not asking you to find it immediately. It couldn't possibly be found in this desolate place. However, when you go to the divine realm in the future, you'll have the chance to obtain it. This lord will wait for you, Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire went on. No kidding. Looks impossible to leave the way you look. Could you go for a stroll if not wait? Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, Then what exceptional mystical power will Senior reward me with? If this mystical power was really kick-ass, then after he obtained those divine items, he really could consider doing this business. This lord will send you a sliver of divine sense and let you see the mystical power's power, Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said. Xiao, a small luminous spot flew out from the stone statue and stopped before Ling Han. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless. Carefully observing it for a while and making sure that it was indeed containing a memory, he finally extended his finger and pressed at it. Inside his consciousness, a scene of battle immediately appeared. A man whose face couldn't be seen clearly was engaged in a fierce battle. His opponent was a sword user, whose sword lights were piercing and extremely terrifying. Their countenances couldn't be seen clearly because of a layer of mist around them. But Ling Han had a feeling that Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was this person, and not the sword user. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire suddenly unleashed his might, for arms actually grew out of his body as if he'd turned into an octopus. The 6 arms activated mystic arts at the same time as if he'd turned into 3 people. Ling Han was astonished. Although he also grasped many mystical powers and mystic arts, at least, annihilating Dragon Star Arrow and Earth Overturning Seal couldn't be executed simultaneously. However, if he could have 4 more arms, it would be completely different. 6 arms moved and activated 5 mystic arts at once, instantly suppressing that swordsman. How is it this is immovable deity, metal body mystical power? This is only the first tier, and cultivating further. The entire body can also enlarge, and the power of a swipe would be unstoppable. Thunder, Fire, Heavenly Emperor said with an enticing tone. This lord spent tremendous effort and almost died in a historic site to find this exceptional mystical power. Want to learn it? If you want to learn it, then bring those 4 divine items, and this lord will teach you. Learn it? He very much wanted to learn it. Even if it was only the first tier that transformed the body into one of 6 arms, it was still extremely practical. Being able to unleash many mystical powers simultaneously, its value was too great. Ling Han nodded and said, "Okay, I'll do my best to find those 4 divine items. But, Senior, my current strength is too weak. Can you impart some divine art first to increase my chances, or else, if I really die, it'll also be a loss for Senior, right?" It was rare to meet such a powerful existence, so the benefits obviously had to be taken. Chapter 756, Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. Chapter 756, Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. Henyi, Henyi. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire was instantly annoyed and said, "You haven't worked for this lord yet, and you're already asking for benefits." He'd never seen such a shameless person. To come here wasn't an easy thing. Senior, in this world, I can guarantee that there are no more than 5 people that can come here. If anything happens to me, Senior might have to wait another 80 to 100 years, Ling Han said with a smile. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire didn't respond, and seemed to feel that what Ling Han said had some logic to it. After a while he said, "All right, this lord can teach you a mystic art that's slightly inferior. However, something passed down by this lord is obviously a unique art. Senior, please instruct me," Ling Han said respectfully. After all, he was receiving the benefits here. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire thought and said, "What do you want to learn?" This lord is a master of all sorts of mystic arts, saber arts, sword arts, rod arts, and palm arts. And although some of these even this lord hasn't learned yet, the exceptional arts in my memory are enough to shock the world. Ling Han didn't know if he was boasting. He said, "I want to learn formations." In close combat, he had the Earth Overturning Seal, which was a mystical power, and at a medium range, he had the 3 styles of Black Origin, which was usable up to the Shattering Void tier. At a long distance, the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow was also a mystical power with infinite power. Therefore, he had to make up for his lack of skill in formations. He couldn't master any profound formations so far. Firstly, there were pitifully little formation masters, and not many formations were passed down. Secondly, forces that grasped formations kept it all to themselves and were unwilling to teach outsiders formations above 6th tier. The key was that formations could perfectly match with any mystic art, and they just had to be laid out, no effort needed to be spent controlling them. You're quite lucky. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said somewhat sourly, "This lord doesn't use formations, but I just happen to have had obtained an ancient formation once. Lucky you." The stone statue flickered as a luminous ball floated out from it. Ling Han observed it momentarily and then pressed his finger on it. Wang, a formation diagram, instantly appeared in his consciousness. It changed continuously with a wonderful pattern, and some information surfaced that told him some of the basics about this formation. The formation was called Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation, and after it was set up, it could gather heaven and earth's spirit chi to form an ice dragon, which possessed the power to rival the Shattering Void tier. *T, I've been deceived. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire should be an elite from the divine realm, and the mystic arts he grasped were obviously at divine level, like the thunderclap ninth heaven and similar mystical powers. However, this formation couldn't be called something at divine level. Although it could rival the Shattering Void tier, it was a 10th tier formation, which was far from what Ling Han had anticipated. Whatever, even if he was given a divine level formation, he wouldn't have the divine materials to create the formation's eye. Even now, he wouldn't be able to take out 10th tier treasure materials and could only gather materials slowly. However, it also wouldn't take just a short amount of time for him to grasp 10th tier formation patterns. And when he grasped them, he probably would have already found enough materials. After all, if he were to unite the East, North, West, and South regions, it would obviously be much less difficult to find 10th tier treasured materials. Perhaps he could ask Foam Piyun to strike down a star, and if he was lucky, he might be able to reap some 10th tier rare metals. Stupid. I have Heaven Transformation Bowl. What does it matter even if I don't have 10th tier rare metal? As long as there are massive amounts of materials, I can refine them step by step, Ling Han said inwardly. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire sneered inwardly. Although he'd indeed imparted to him a genuine 10th tier formation, would a mere deity transformation tier brat have the ability to gather the materials? Even if he could, to carve formation patterns on 10th tier rare metal was also a massive undertaking. Dare mess with this lord? Then this lord would have you watch helplessly. However, he didn't know that Ling Han had Heaven Transformation Bowl that could create 10th tier rare metal and the Black Tower, such a heaven-defying thing. So long as the ingredients were there, how difficult would it be to carve the formation patterns? Instead, it was the comprehension of the formation that was difficult. Thank you very much, Senior, Ling Han said with a smile. Hee, the Emperor doesn't have hungry soldiers. Since you're working for this lord wouldn't treat you shabbily. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire also said with a smile, thinking that Ling Han definitely suffered an unspeakable grievance. He paused shortly and went on, Leave this little girl with this lord first, and let this lord instruct her with utmost care. Someday, she'll definitely become a genius of a generation, and sweeping across the world would be nothing difficult. No, Stinky Stone. Lord Nyo is warning you. Don't have any ideas about Nyo, or else Nyo'll eat you. Who Nyo said, ferociously, to dare say to take her as a disciple, was he even fit to? Senior, she's still small, and whether she'll be a disciple can be discussed in the future. Anyway, for Senior, 100 years passes in a snap, Ling Han said with a smile. Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire wasn't pleased, but he needed Ling Han to work for him and could only stomach it. As he saw it, after Ling Han found the 4 divine items for him, he would be able to extricate from the current predicament, and sorting out Ling Han then would obviously be as easy as a hand's turn. At that time, it would be hard for the little girl to escape his grasp, and she would have to become his disciple obediently. Senior, can you tell me about the divine realm? Ling Han asked again. Humph. This lord has already given you benefits, and you're not even doing things for this lord, yet still caring about these meaningless things? Someday, when you advance into the divine realm, you'll obviously know. What's the difference between earlier and later? Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire said impatiently, Go, hurry up and leave. If the stone statue could move, he would definitely have waved his hand nonstop. Ling Han knew the stone statue was obviously not Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire's true body, and the rivers of lightning and fire flowed down the mountain walls. So could this person's true body be at the bottom of the valley? Unfortunately, whether he was trapped or hurt, he definitely wouldn't reveal his secrets to Ling Han. Then, Senior, farewell. Ling Han said and cupped his hands, pulling on Hunyo and turning to leave. Hunyo was still somewhat annoyed and turned around to make a face at the stone statue, then finally turned to leave. As before, she led Ling Han away. After the 2 of them disappeared, a divine sense was transmitted in the stone house. Strange. Who exactly is this little girl, being able to defy this lord's 5-sense blockade? Her strength is clearly low, but even if this lord's current strength is not 0, 1% of what it was at peak stage, it should still be able to trap an existence at the sentiment severance tier. However, if it were so, they wouldn't be able to enter. This lord can't control his own power anymore. The five senses blockade can protect this lord, but it has also become a fetter for this lord. Fortunately, meeting this strange little girl, there's finally a ray of hope for this lord to be free. This brat had better not die. Soon, Ling Han walked out of the cave and his five senses returned, making him deeply moved. Although the road he walked by earlier wasn't long, it was like 1,000 or 10,000 years to him, and if it weren't for his resolute willpower, any other person would have already collapsed. On the vast lands, just how many more old monsters are hidden? He muttered, looking back. Chapter 757, Corpse 2. Chapter 757, Corpse 2. Henyi, Henyi. After summoning Zhu Xian Air, the rabbit, and the gold-seeking rat from the Black Tower, the party started to walk back. They still had a mission to defeat and convince North regions, large sects. And when the time came, Great Ling Empire's army could simply collect the territories. Moreover, the massive influential power of these large sects could arouse the small forces in the periphery to surrender and greatly speed up Great Ling Empire's expansion. The saying, "Capture the leader first to capture all his followers," reflected just that it was an intellectual conclusion of the ancestors. On the way, Ling Han tried to understand the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. It was a 10th tier formation, and theoretically speaking, it shouldn't be something that Ling Han could grasp now. However, Ling Han had constantly studied the formations on the Revere Life sword earlier, and this killing formation was more kick-ass than the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation. He was quite the clever and intelligent man. In the previous life, he'd resolved quite a few 9th tier formations and had considerable fundamentals. Now that he'd obtained the detailed explanation of a 10th tier formation, his improvement was obviously fast. On the other side, he was also collecting various rare metals. Buying along the way, he bought all the rare metals that could be bought. Don't doubt his financial capability. He was a tycoon with the Black Tower, and if he took out a dragon blood tyrant ginseng, a large party of the spiritual infant tier would probably have to pay out all its resources for it. Of course, Ling Han wouldn't sell dragon blood tyrant ginseng, but how much treasured medicine was inside the Black Tower? He refined some pills, and if there wasn't enough time, he'd simply sell the raw materials in exchange for wealth, which all turned into rare metals. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han took out the Heaven Transformation Bowl and refined these rare metals. First tier turned into second tier turned into third tier turned into fourth tier. Spending huge amounts of raw materials, he definitely could turn it into a pile of 10th tier rare metals used to construct a 10th tier formation. Soon, the Shinra sect also chose to pay allegiance, then the Beast Emperor sect, and at last the Blood Flame Valley was the only one left. After Ling Han spent a shocking amount of wealth, he finally refined enough 10th tier rare metal. Probably half of the entire North region's rare metals were swept up by him. This was something that even the Half Moon sect, the Winter Moon sect, and other such super forces didn't dare to imagine, but Ling Han did it. An alchemy emperor and the Black Tower, the combination of the two. Money? No big deal. Of course, without the Heaven Transformation Bowl, all would be naught. This treasure was truly nature-defying. Ling Han forged the 10th tier rare metals into 108 short swords. In reality, he wanted to make them normal in size, but there was too little rare metal and he could only opt for the second best option. The number 108 was the demand of the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation, which needed that many formations' eyes. Inside the Black Tower, it was too easy for Ling Han to refine tools, and the so-called 10th tier rare metals were no different from dough, which he could knead at will. The next step was the key had to carve the formation patterns on the swords. Ling Han still hadn't thoroughly grasped the Ice Dragon Ground Blast Formation, and if he forcibly copied it, then he would only draw out its shape without obtaining its essence. Formations needed to communicate with heaven and earth to attract spirit chi, or else it would be but a bare outline. So Ling Han could only wait till he truly grasped the formation's essence to lay out the large formation. He believed that it wouldn't take too long. Ling Han was very confident in himself. The party hastened towards the Blood Flame Valley. It was obviously not difficult to subdue a mere spiritual infant-tier force, but hurrying on the journey was somewhat time-consuming. After all, North Region wasn't small either. Since they were constantly on the way and had little time to rest and eat, Hunyo had enough, fervently requesting to stop for a rest. Ling Han thought that they would be able to reach the Blood Flame Valley tomorrow, and a night's time wouldn't matter, so he agreed. There was obviously fine wine and dishes prepared. In the North Region, everyone was very relaxed. After all, they could declare themselves as kings or overlords, as they were invincible beings here. With the bonfire raging, Zhu Xian Air specially played a song on the pipes and danced, agitating Ling Han's heart and mind as he watched, thinking that exceptional beauties were exceptional beauties after all, making him want to turn into a beast by the minute. Hunyo was unconvinced and started to dance amusingly, shaking the ground with rumbles that scared off the nearby beasts. Ling Han laughed loudly and felt very happy. Under such a harmonious atmosphere, he even forgot about ruling the world and simply wanted to live on undisturbed. As for the important matters like splitting open the skies, other people could do it. Why should he carry the burden on his shoulders? At this moment, a frightening strong wind assaulted straight for Ling Han's back. The time of surprise attack was grasped extremely well. It was not only when Ling Han was eating, but also when he was the most relaxed, and the attack's destructive power was also extremely terrifying, reaching the level of medium-level heaven tier. Ling Han's body turned into lightning, avoiding the attack by a hair's breadth. No, he didn't completely avoid it. His left rib was still hit, the cloth on it torn apart, and a black mark shockingly appeared on his waist, as if clawed out by 5 fingers. It was not only terrifyingly black, but it also emitted a faint odor and was extremely likely to be containing poisonous qi. "Who is it?" the others shouted angrily. Hunyo was more direct and charged out, diving into the underbrush. Pung, pung, pung. 2 figures came out fighting. One was obviously Hunyo, who was distinguished by her small figure. The other person was tall and sturdy, and wore a black robe and a black cloak on his head, looking as if his entire person could fuse into one with the darkness. This was an illusion, or else with their divine sense, Ling Han and Hunyo definitely would not know that someone had gotten so close, unless the other party was a shattering void tier elite, but apparently it wasn't one. Shattering void tier elites wouldn't need to launch a surprise attack, and would just take them away with one move. Ling Han called Hunyo back and said, "Sir, you've been following us for quite a while, right?" 9 entire days, the person in black robes said in a calm tone, appearing composed. His voice was extremely low and deep, and even had an indescribable strangeness like the grating of metals. "Such patience," Ling Han said. This person had obviously long wanted to assassinate him, yet endured it silently, finding the best opportunity, and the result was that he finally got it and slightly injured Ling Han with one attack. "What are you called?" The person in the black robe removed the cloak, covering his head, and revealed a square face that appeared very young. But Ling Han had a strange feeling that the other party should be extremely old because the wrinkles on his arms were very deep. "I'm called Corpse 2, the person in the black robe said. "Corpse 2? What sort of a name was that? From the 1,000 Corpse sect?" Ling Han asked again. Corpse 2 chuckled and said, "It's not a good given name, and once it's said, people would guess so. Then you can change it." Ling Han also laughed. "Forget it. I don't mind others knowing," Corpse 2 said, not caring at all. From the two's harmonious conversation, who would have thought that Corpse 2 had ruthlessly sneak attacked Ling Han and tried to kill him?